Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the late night talk. We're out here in Hawaii. We thought we'd just try to get out here and see who's out on the airwaves and provide you guys with some entertainment, maybe something to talk about. If nothing else, something to laugh at. Here with my good friend Paul. Paul, what's cracking, my friend? How's it going?
Going good, George. Going
Nice,
good.
man. Nice, yeah. So for those who are listening, Paul's been a podcast master, man. He's on like hour 4 right now or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long I was on with Ben, but
Yeah. So you guys were getting into this idea of like, for those who may have just be tuning in, you were previously talking about this idea that gets away from the corporate structure, like this idea of trickle down shit. It seems like trickle down poverty these days, but you guys were getting into this new corporate structure, man. What's that all about? What do you think?
well, I mean, to really kind of dive into it, it's Ben's the master of the Terra Libre project, and so we were having a discussion about what that looks like and how it would be implemented in the future, and it's just stuff that he's still working on it,
Right?
but he's been working on it a long time, and mad respect to Ben for you know chasing something for so long and getting it to a place where I think he's approaching being able to build a model, and so that's always exciting. Anything that's going to disrupt the the status quo, especially when it comes to our economy and our capitalistic society. To me, is always gets my attention. It's exciting.
Yeah, I liked what he was saying too. It seems that the only thing that can really get us out of this mess is like a new sort of vehicle. Because no matter everything's been captured, regulatory capture, corporations have been captured, boards have been captured. The only thing that really gets us out of this is a new idea or old ideas that are put together in a different way.
Yeah, he's like he's going to invert the hourglass.
Mm,
Start getting the sand going the other way.
I like that. That's a great way to look at it.
I mean, as far as structure goes, and decentralizing the whole thing, which I think is key. And the more that I just spent a couple hours chatting with him about this stuff, and then after getting off with him and having a few minutes to digest it, it just seems like it's a revolutionary concept. What he's wanting to do. Um, really loose knit structure. I think I said on his podcast, they almost seem litigation proof.
Mm,
There's, every member is autonomous. Every member has their own motives, directives, and objectives. And that makes it really hard to attack. Um, it's like a corporation's wet dream, really. Um, it's member and manager based, not employee based, which is to me you know the sticking point for employees. I just wrote this, I don't know, couple paragraph summary of our conversation. Um, I was gonna email it to him or message it to him, but these are all some of the things that were going through my head about you know taking advantage of, like, in like hyper taking advantage of corporate laws that corporations take advantage of every day, but making those laws and rules benefit people and not the entity.
nice.
It's like, it's fascinating if you think about it, really. And you gotta, you know it'd be great if Ben was here chatting with
Yeah.
with us about it, but I think it's late in Colorado, and I think that guy's sleeping.
Yeah, I think so. What's up, Kev? Good to see you, buddy. Oh,
There he
you're
is, the man.
I think your mic is muted, or your sound isn't working.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that,
you're right. The mic was muted. I forgot it mics by default when I plug it in.
okay,
I said
nice.
it's mid-afternoon here, so I just saw your text and I just finished work, so I figured, let's catch up a little bit. I think it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been
Well,
a
I talked
long
to
time.
Paul last week. What's going on? What did I miss? What were you talking about?
Well, we were just beginning to talk about, Ben has an idea about the Terra Libre project, and he was talking to Paul, and Paul was giving us some ideas about not only what they talked about, but his idea on changing the corporate structure and finding a way to compete in the marketplace of ideas, but with a different structure. And it's fascinating to think about. And my point to Paul was to get him going, or just to talk about it, was that everything seems captured, whether it's regulatory capture, corporations, or even people's mindsets. Like, it just seems like we're stuck in this. I think there's an old Depeche Mode that says master and servant. And it just seems like we're stuck in this mode, man.
Yeah, it ties into something I was riffing with Ben about last week, the idea of Luciferian versus Christic ascension. Luciferian being where you just kind of turn your back on the world and go, fuck it, I'm just going to take care of my immediate reality. Whereas the Christic is you actually try to engage and use your knowledge to affect positive change. And honestly, I don't know where I stand on this one yet.
That's deep. Yeah. Where does suffering fit into that one?
Well, the suffering happens before you get to the stage where you make this choice. Right, you go through the suffering, you go through the dark night of the soul, and then you become awake and aware, and then you start thinking about your purpose and what to do with this life. And then, so yeah, that's ultimately the choice. Do I just, take care of my own world and that's it, or do you actually try to, elevate through aiding others? I suppose. And
I think it's the latter. I don't think you can. I don't think you can get where you need to go by taking care of your own world, because you are everyone's part of this world, right? And the relationships you have affect not only those around you, but the relationships you have or the relationships you don't have affect you. Like, how can you take care of your own world without taking care of everybody around you?
Well, this is where meaning and belief comes in, because
Okay.
that belief set implies that there is somewhere to go and that there is something to do. So the other interpretation is that nothing matters at all. It's pointless. There's nothing to be done. So just relax and chill and not worry about anything, and everything's fine. Everything's going to sort itself out. There's a great little haiku. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's something like, sitting in front of a fire with 10 bags of rice, I let the world take care of itself. And that's basically what Luciferian ascension is.
Do what thou wilt. Crowley
Do
for
what
you.
that will fits into it. I think either way, right? Again, it's because it's thou and it's thou's will, and your will is going to be different from other people's will based on what you think your will affects in the world and whether it matters or not.
Is that any different than like the duality of man?
I think it ties, right? The duality is still the idea of I'm a separate thing and I can affect my will and exertion on other separate things. Whereas, I don't know, to me, the non-duality thing's feels a bit more fate-based. You think everything's one.
Yeah, it reminds me of a koan or something that says, like, a young man goes to his master and he says, "Master, there's two dogs fighting inside me. There's a evil dog and a good dog." He's like, "They're fighting for my soul." He's like, "Which one will win?" And he says, "Whichever one you feed."
Yeah.
Right. And I think, look, the truth is, like, that's all of us. Like, I don't think, especially young men, like, I can't speak on behalf of any young women because I'm not a woman, but I think when it comes to men, Like, we go through some dark times. Like, as a man, you're pretty destructive. If you just see little kids running around, like little boys are wild Indians, man. They're like banging stuff and wrecking things and getting nuts. But even as we become older men, like, we still have we have a tendency to wreck our own lives because we don't thoroughly understand what the world is or who we are. But I think that's the Luciferian part of people, is not understanding that your actions have real consequences.
George, did you say wild Indians?
I did, yes. Is that offensive?
Not engines, the correct term.
That's what people called me when I was little. You like a wild Indian, man.
My girlfriend's like 1/16th engine, so I can say engine because I'm allowed, because I'm dating one. Isn't that the rule, right? You can be racist if you're dating one.
Yeah, I think that's the rule, actually. Or if you have a friend that's one, then you can say, I have a friend that's one. What do you think, Paul? A couple of white guys just being retards?
No, it's just funny. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever, exactly. That's a Luciferian
thing. And we're back. We're back to Lucifer.
We're back.
You know, speaking of Lucifer, I interviewed Dr. Gallagher, who is he's the psychiatrist at New York Medical. He graduated from Yale. He's a world-renowned psychologist. And he wrote a book recently called Demonic Foes. And in this book, he talks about how he was in his office, and I think it was when he was still at Yale. And he's in his office, and he's doing his thing. And, you know, he's a very scientific guy. And when you talk to him, he's real straightforward, you know, and he looks like a serious guy. He's like he's actually big, like 6'5", 280. No joke looking serious psychologist, right? And so I'm talking to him, and he goes, you know, George, I was in my office in Yale, and it was around 3:00, and a Jesuit priest comes knocking on my door, and I let him in, and he says, Dr. Gallagher, I have some incredible information, and I need your help. I am representing this Satanist. She is not an ordinary Satanist. She is the high priestess of a satanic cult. She's been possessed. And I need you to take a look at her and give me your opinion. And Dr. Gallagher's like, listen, man, I appreciate you coming here. It's all these things you've laid out. You have a high priestess from a satanic cult. You know, I'd like to talk to her. You know, everything's going to be, I am not seeing her as her doctor, but I will see her. But I just want you to know, Father, that I don't subscribe to any sort of, you know, paranormal mumbo jumbo. And, you know, and I'm probably going to, I'm telling you right now, I'm probably not going to believe any of this. And the priest says, yeah, that's exactly why I came to you. And so he brings this girl in, and the girl, before he brings, so that's the initial meeting. And then the priest says, great, I'm going to bring her by maybe next week. And he goes, fantastic, I'll be here next week. So the day before he brings the high priestess from the satanic cult to meet the doctor, him and his wife are going to bed that night, and they wake up to this horrible cat, like their cats are fighting. And like, he says he comes out of bed and he sees like, you know, he sees his two cats, and they're literally just scratching each other. And one had scratched the other one so bad it had ripped like a big shred of cat skin off its face, and it was like bleeding. He's like, what in the world's going on with you guys? So he separates them, goes back to bed. The next day, the high priestess from the satanic cult comes to meet him. And the first thing she says to him is, how'd you like that cat fight last night?
Oh, shit.
Dude, right? And so it gets like, that's the kind of like one of the, as you get into the first chapter of a book, that's like the opening scene. And it's enough to like make you go like, okay, you know, it's almost like a scary movie. Like you start off thinking about it and you're like, oh, I don't know. But then he starts getting to some really kind of deep and dark details about like what happened. And she starts talking about how she has like these powers that she can kind of remote view, but they were given to her by Satan. And the reason she had, like, here's what tripped me out. Like I had to set the book down for a minute, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, but it's a little bit of what happened to her story. In her satanic cult, she was what was called a breeder. So she would get pregnant, and they would have the fetus, and then they would like sacrifice the fetus and just do all this super dark stuff. And that's how she said she got her powers. But what's your guys' take on that kind of stuff, man? You guys believe in exorcisms and satanic cults and whatnot?
No, I mean,
Paul?
it sounds like what those wacky loons that listen to Alex Jones accuse the Democrats of doing, right? Like satanic worshiping and baby killing and some shit that's happening at a pizza restaurant
Oh,
somewhere.
Mm.
those are some fun rabbit holes to go down for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think that there's my take. Well, if we leave the book alone for a minute and we talk about these other rabbit holes, when I hear Alex Jones or when I hear any sort of people that are talking about pedophilia or talking about satanic rituals, like I think that some of that stuff's real. Number one, number two, what I think what's happening is that you have a lot of blackmail going on. And maybe there's not incredible satanic pedophile cults. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I think politicians, especially, I think they end up in situations they don't want to be in. I think they end up on Epstein Island, partying, drinking. Next thing you know, they're laid out and there's a kid next to them. There's pictures that are taken. And then those politicians are forever in the pocket of the blackmailer. And, if you think about what's the one thing the world would hate you for? Be doing something to a kid, right? So I think
Yeah.
that is what all these politicians have on them. I think there's files on most of these people. You hear about orgies and parties, and let's face it, like I see a lot of politicians, they spend the majority of their time raising money, going to fundraisers. They're not that savory of people. And so Paul, back to your idea of like that's what I think is happening when you hear these rants. They may get spiraled out of control, but I think that there's at least blackmail files with that stuff happening. Is that too tin hat for you?
Pretty tin hat, and it's not my idea. But I mean, I don't know, George. It's pretty wild to think that. Here's what I know, right?
Okay.
10 people can't keep a secret, and
I disagree. I think 10 people with a right amount of money are all shutting their mouth.
I don't know.
Think about the Greatest Generation. Like, how many people from the Greatest Generation don't talk about the war they were in? Like, they would just they don't talk about it.
That's but they're not holding secrets.
Sure, they are from their family. Like, my dad would never talk about Vietnam until way later in life. Those guys hold secrets that at least in my opinion, at least in my thing, I've seen grown men hold on to secrets that they don't want to tell anybody.
Well, and I don't think it's because they're ashamed or embarrassed. Like, you're talking about things that these men witnessed that created a lot of trauma in a lot of their lives, and so they just don't want to talk about it. And some of those guys, might have actually thought they were doing something wrong by killing other people, and so they don't want to talk about it. That's different than like, hey, me, you, and and the senator from Nebraska and Wisconsin and Wyoming, we're going to get together and we're going to go to town on some little kids in some pizza parlor somewhere. That's way different than war secrets. What soldiers return from war and don't want to talk about. But
I don't know, Kat.
I mean, if it's true, I mean, 10 people can't keep a secret. Okay, how about this? 100 people can't keep a secret.
Well, here's
the
counter to that. I think that it is what you said is true, Paul. Like there is obviously it's hard to keep secrets, but then I'm countering that with some of the other stories that I've heard. Like I just heard this one recently, and this is like not made up. There was a real pedophilia ring bust in Belgium in like the early 2000s. I had a really awesome podcast about this. I'll try to find it and share it if you're interested, because it's really long. But the summary of it is that in the early 2000s, there's a guy named Marc Dutroux, and he had this he was a pedophile. He was a normal guy, and then he somehow started getting paid millions of dollars and for some service provided to, like, I don't know, they didn't really disclose how. He just started making money out of nowhere. And then this came out that the police were somehow involved, like some rank and file cops were involved in this, and they were also like going to his house or whatever. And he was hosting all these people in his basement, and there were a couple of girls that were kidnapped that weren't found for years. And then they actually found this girl in the guy's basement, and she went and testified and said, yeah, all this stuff was going on for like months that I was down there. Identified the people that came, and there was like politicians involved, and the police chief somehow, I don't know how he buried it, but he ended up promoting the police that were involved in the affair. So they got promoted. And like, I don't know, I'm giving you the bad short overview because it's a really long, interesting story, but that's an actual story that happened. And the guy was convicted, and it came out eventually. So these things do happen, whether it's happening in the U.S. government, whether it's Epstein involved. Like nobody knows that for sure. But why didn't they release his client list? Why is that still a secret?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, are there pedophiles that are, at the federal level?
Absolutely. Dennis Hastert, he was the Speaker of the House.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I believe that. Is it like all of these people like colluding with each other to have like pedophilia orgies and all the, some of the other outlandish things that some of these guys assert? Like, I don't think that's it. I mean, but there are all types of people that represent us in Congress for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if they're all in. I wouldn't make that claim. But
Well,
the point I mentioned in this story is, it's like you should read it just to see how it got covered. Like, there are all these different ways that they kept people voluntarily from speaking about it. That's what was interesting about the story to me.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out. It sounds, I mean, for one, like shit. I mean, there are
the guy's name. I'll try to find the podcast too, but it's really long.
Yeah, post it up in the chat. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's out there, man. I don't, one is enough. I think. Mark Dutroux, Belgium. Yeah, what about and then there's the Franklin scandal too. That happened, I think, in the 80s, where there were, lots of kids they took from orphanages, and it's covered up. It's covered up, man. It's something that no one wants to talk about. It's the ultimate blackmail. There are some freaks out there, and sometimes it makes me wish we had stronger laws. Like, if you're caught doing something like that, you should. I don't think there's any sort of redemption for you. There's no more redemption curve. Like, that should be the end of it. Like, you should. I don't know.
Say it, George.
I think you should be castrated, like either chemically castrated or physically castrated. I think that's fair. I'm not a judge or a jury, but in the world of George Monty, that's what would happen.
And oh, what a world that would be.
Oh, what a glorious world, right? Yeah, it's crazy to think about. But yeah, that's what when I think that on that level, like, I don't know. I think maybe a lot, from what I heard, when you think about people that tell a lot of lies, or people that stand and grandstand, there's always some shred of truth to it, man. Like, it makes me think how much of what Alex Jones says has some truth to it. Probably a pretty big percentage, right?
Wrong.
What do you mean wrong?
I mean wrong. I don't think that a pretty big percentage of what Alex Jones says has truth. You might. I don't.
Can you give me like
50-50?
50-50?
I think he's off about half the time.
I think he's off like at least.
But like some crazy shit that he said, I was like, when I heard it initially, I was like, that is fucking crazy. There's no way that's true. Like, I remember he was talking 15 years ago. I didn't listen to him much, but sometimes like people would share snippets of his show or whatever, and he was talking about pig humans in like 2005.
Yeah. And
I was like, he was saying that they're experimenting on splitting pig DNA with human DNA in some secret lab. And I was like, no, there's no way it's true. But it is. It came out a few years ago that actually was happening.
Yeah, they're making.
See if I can find the link about that.
chimeras,
I think they call them, right? Chimeras, and
yeah. I remember I remember it was verified. I gotta find it though, but I did remember. Here it is. It's in National Geographic. That's pretty legit. Human pig hybrid created in lab. I'll just send that over.
There's also a really good Alex Jones meme that says like, "Where are we now?" And it has like all the things that he's got right and like where we are. Have you guys seen that one?
Yeah. And the next one's interdimensional elves or something, right?
Yeah, totally.
Because he says some outlandish shit like, what is it? The government's experimenting with long-term DMT use and contacting interdimensional elves and communicating with satanic beings from other dimensions.
I don't know about the satanic beings part, but that part's true. They're doing a long-form study at King's College where they're intravenously giving people DMT, and they are interacting with beings, and the same people are seeing the same beings. So, I mean, we could scratch that one off.
Yeah.
Paul, that one would fit. That one
scratch
would.
That one.
Yeah, that one's actually true, Paul. Maybe we should go through these and find out how much truth there are.
The Alex Jones variant of that is.
Like, did you read the study? They put out a study.
I talked to Rick Strassman, whose friend is doing the study.
So a friend of a friend. I've heard that story.
No, a friend that was consulting on the study. So he's like,
it's a friend of a friend.
No. I talked to Rick Strassman, who consulted on that study.
Oh, I thought you talked to Rick Strassman, who has a friend who.
Well, he consulted on that study, and his friend is the one he was consulting with on that study.
What was his friend's position?
He was I think he was the head of the study.
Oh.
The lead doctor, if you will.
Yeah, go through the list. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
I got
the Alex Jones version though is a little bit crazier, right?
Right.
Okay, that's how the government became evil and took over, because they've been exploring DMT realms, and they got co-opted by satanic elements. That's his opinion on it.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. Unverifiable, unfortunately.
Unverifiable.
No, come on, really?
I've never met any demonic entities. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I haven't met any myself.
I don't even know how I would define demonic.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to think about, right? Like, what is a demon? It's something you're afraid of? Is it something that is trying to kill you? Is it something that...
And even more interesting is, are the demons really angels? Because if your ascension to a more spiritual, awake self is a direct result of how much pain and suffering you go through and survive, then are the demons that cause that pain and suffering actually angels in disguise?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that they're all
sort of that, I guess.
You know, I saw an interesting interview today with Charles Manson, and they were asking him if he thought he was Jesus Christ. And he says, which Jesus? You mean Black Jesus in Florida? Or do you mean the Jewish Jesus? Or do you mean the Christian Jesus? Because I believe I am Jesus. Jesus is a consciousness that lives in your head. And I was like, that's a pretty astute answer from a guy that's supposed to be super crazy. Like, it's a fucking really good answer. You know, it's crazy to think about the people that we deem to be crazy. When you go back and you listen to some of the things they say, they're really not that crazy.
I like the Black Jesus in Florida. Where in Florida is he?
I don't know, but he's having a good time, according to Charles Manson.
Nice. Probably in Miami.
Probably.
Somewhere.
He might be Cuban. He might have swam over.
Could be. The hair of wool.
How old is Charles Manson now? It's got to be like close to 90, right?
Oh, I think he's dead. But I was watching this old. I did a podcast today on emotional capitalism, and in order to drive a point home, I had to quote him. So I had to go find a thing.
Okay.
Hey, how do you find time to podcast? And is that why? Man. Is that why my Christmas packages are going to be late, George?
No. Surprisingly, your package should be on time. I'm a maniac, man. I usually get up around like 4:45, and then sometimes I lay there till like 5, and then I come downstairs. I make some coffee, make some breakfast for my kid and my wife, and then it gives me about an hour to do something, and then I got to pack up my stuff, and I usually leave my house at 6:30 if I'm driving my kid to school, and then I get to work at like 8, work about 12 hours, come home, and if I feel like it, I try to read, I try to get guests, I try to answer all my emails, and then I go to bed and do it all over again. And then I usually, some mornings my wife will take my kid to school, so usually on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays I can stay home until like 8:30, and then I can do it. I usually have guests in the morning, so that's when I find time to do them. I just try to get up earlier and go to bed later, so your package will be fine, just so you, because I care.
But that's the 12-hour thing. That's because it's holidays, or you often work 12-hour shifts?
Yeah, I'd say that's about par for the course. I have a helper now, and so that helps out, but it's par for the course. You know, it's pretty much, sometimes it's 9 hours, but it's never under 9, and it's somewhere between 9 and 12. By the time I don't get home until about dark. I leave when it's dark, I get home when it's dark, and sometimes I just feel dark inside.
What sunrise is it? But isn't Hawaii the sunrise and sunset the same pretty much all the time?
It's pretty
No,
close.
I'd say there's about an hour shift. Like our time doesn't change, but in midsummer and the solstice, it probably stays light until almost 8, and now it's getting dark like at 6:55 or so. So
okay, yeah, but just an hour. Like New York in winter, it's dark at 4:30, and then in summer it's like 10:30.
Yeah. The higher the latitude.
In Bali here, it's the same. I think it's even less than an hour. I think it's only changes about like 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
It's what's weird is it's the same as the tides. Like the tides on the equator hardly move at all, but you start getting up into like Oregon or Alaska, and you get these really, even California has like 4 or 5 foot tide changes, maybe 8 foot sometimes.
Right.
Which brings me to a point. I am testing out this theory that you can monitor your girlfriend or wife's cycle by full moons. What do you guys think about that?
I don't.
Well, that's why they call it the moon in all the fantasy novels, right?
Right. That's why they have like werewolves, right? People go crazy. That's
what the hippies call it here too. I got a text the other day. It's like, oh, my partner's on her moon right now. I was like, oh god.
There you go, man.
Can't stomach the hippies anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's why.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't
Extreme hippie.
You know what's big here? What's big here is flat Earth. I was not expecting that to be such a big thing amongst us here. I'm like, and it's like anything else here too, because people, they stick with others of the same belief system. And there's been several times where I thought I made a new friend, and then the topic of flat Earth comes up, and I'm just like, oh no, I'm one of those guys. And I'll believe a lot of outlandish shit if there's some logical sense to it, but there's just no making sense of the flat Earth theory for me. Like I can, like it's disprovable so fast, and I'm like, I don't even know why you're entertaining this topic anymore.
I've heard guys argue it really well. Like people that are like I think there's this guy Eric Dubay, I think is his name. He's like the mastermind behind it, and like that guy is really good at rhetoric. And I heard him call into Stefan Molyneux, like that. He's like a super logical guy. But I heard them debate, and I'm like, dude, this guy is really holding his own right here. It just goes to show you, in someone who's really good with their language and their ability to speak clearly and concisely and spout facts, and like it was really good. I was impressed. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. And it just.
But I mean, to do that, you have to leave out some very inconvenient thing. Like one of the last times I encountered this, we met these people on the cliff near here, and I had just come back from the U.S. and I literally flew Bali to Europe, Europe to New York to California, California back to Bali, always going in the same direction on the plane, to the left on the map. So they started talking about flat Earth, and I was like, well, then what's happening with the plane maps on all the planes that I'm on? Because I literally kept going to the left on the map, and I went from the same point back to the same point. And I mean, the only way they can explain it is like everyone's in on it, right? All the pilots, all the airline map companies, all the air traffic control, they've all got the wrong map, and they're showing you lies, and they're following a lie-based map, but somehow it still works. And I was just like, dude, you're not going to convince me of that.
Yeah, I wish we could see, like, I wish that we had access to the Google Earth satellites so that we as, individuals could, I guess we kind of do have access to them, but I wish we could have a little bit more access where we could really dive down into like the quadrant or dive down into certain spots. It would be awesome to be able to do that, but I don't think we have as much clarity as we think in there. That being said, though, like it
no, and I understand where it comes from. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I'm just throwing stuff out. I saw a movie one time that was like, imagine being in a bunker and you were a prisoner there. And the person in that bunker told you, like, look, there's aliens, man. I'm actually saving you. I'm saving your life right now. You can have all the food you want, but you have to stay down because there's freaking aliens, man. We're all gonna die. And then like you could turn on, like he had like 3 TVs going, and on every TV it was like alien invasion, alien invasion. Like, how long would you be down there before you decided, like, yeah, there is an alien invasion? If all you saw were these screens of what was happening, how would you know what the truth is?
What, just based on...
That's the fundamental question on everything. How do you ever know what the truth of anything is?
Yeah. Like, that's the same thing now. That's the point I was making, is like, if all you see all day long is this outlandish propaganda, like, how do you know what's true? Like, and different people, like right now, you can make the argument, like, there's people living in different dimensions. Like, we live in a different dimension than the guy that lives under the bridge. We live in a different dimension than someone that just sits and watches TV all day. Like, we have different truths. We see the world fundamentally different. Like, that's happening right now. Crazy to think about, right? Like, no wonder we can't get along.
Yes. It's only perception. Everyone's perception is slightly different.
So does that represent dimension?
I think so. I think that that's a fair, when you think about dimensions, I think of, well, this box is 4 by 8, and remember that there's that visual kind of trick that you can look at those 2 tables and they don't look the same, but they are the same. Like, one looks like it's a lot longer, but it's really not when you get real close. Like, that's what I think of when I think of dimensions. You think of perspective, you think of perception. Like, yeah, I would argue that we are living in totally different worlds than some people. I have a neighbor that still believes there's COVID and they barely ever come out of their house because they don't want to die from COVID. Like, that's a different dimension that person lives in. Like, that person lives in a world that I think is bananas. And he thinks I'm bananas, but and maybe we're both right in some ways, but like, that's a fundamental different world than the one I live in. And that's happening a lot. Like, that's happening, and I think it's happening by design. Like, whether it's people in the world that are competing for money, that are providing ideas and dimensions for people, or it's some sort of, let's keep these people fighting so that they don't worry about us. But I think it's by design. What do you guys think about that?
We were talking about this last week, I think, I don't know if Paul, I don't know if you had joined yet, but I was speaking with Ben about this, about how it seems like, when the internet came around, we thought it would enhance communication, understanding between people, but actually it achieves the opposite effect because, like you said, depending on how your social media algorithms work, what you filtered out in terms of what you want to see, you're going to see certain people, certain sources of information, and you can effectively live in a totally different reality as someone else who's filtered it out differently. And so there's this breakdown of communication because each side thinks they have their own set of facts because that's all they're seeing. They're only seeing the ones that confirm their belief system.
So how do you determine what truth is?
I don't
You
think
just
any.
accept that there isn't really a bunch of truth, and that it's mostly perception and belief.
Yeah, there's nothing. I think that there's only things that are true enough. Like math is true enough. Like, okay, that's maybe, but it's true enough for us to, it works in the system. Let's go with it. It works, you know. But when you think about, you know, truth, different people have different truths. If a firefighter fights fire and a crime fighter fights crime, what does a freedom fighter fight?
Right. And those are relative truths. Like there's a ton
Right.
of relative truths. But
Right.
how many absolute truths are there? I mean, there's almost none, right?
The
The fact that
Pythagorean
I
theorem.
exist and the fact that I'm going to die, those are the two things I know for sure. But I don't know about the rest if I can say 100% that it's true.
Death and taxes.
Yeah, taxes. Well, funnily enough, I used to say taxes, but right now I don't pay any taxes. So I've eliminated that one.
Nicely done. Different dimension.
Yeah.
I like it.
Different dimension.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Sometimes I think that, so what we talked about, if what we talked about is true, like you can change your own dimension. You can change your own life as fast as you can change the channel on television. Maybe not as fast, but you know, I tell this story sometimes where something happened to me and I just started thinking of myself in a different way. And it allowed me to have a different perspective of myself. And I'm like, wow, I've never thought of myself like that, but I should. I should always think of myself like that. And then once it happened, I'm like, fuck, I could, you know, it just opens your eyes to like what is possible. Like if you see yourself as like, if you see yourself as a truck driver, you're going to be a truck driver. But if you see yourself as someone who can reach through the airwaves and make people's lives incredibly better and do things for them that they can never do for themselves, then you're that guy. You're both people existing together. But if you don't have the courage to thoroughly imagine yourself in a world that is incredible, you may never get the opportunity to live in that world. And I think if you do it enough, I think it's just like how you reconstruct a memory. Like you go back and you reconstruct that memory every time. You're building this memory. And if your mind doesn't really know the difference between something that's real and something you vividly imagine. So I honestly believe if you spend enough time vividly imagining this world and this person that you want to be, you'll become that person. You guys ever do that exercise?
No, I don't.
I used to.
Where does logic stem from, George?
Logic?
Yeah.
Oh man, I guess ancient Greece. Socrates, Plato. Is that
How do you determine what is logical and what is not logical?
me personally?
Yeah.
Well, I would say what is for me, if I'm thinking of something as logical, I transform that into the question of what is possible for me. And what is logical and possible for me may not be logical and possible for somebody else. But it doesn't mean it's illogical for me. You know, I almost think it's a better argument between, you know, what's rational and what is irrational. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Kinda.
Does it sound illogical?
I mean, it's like, I mean, I always kind of viewed logic as being, you know, intuitive and simple.
Okay.
Right. It's not complex. And I don't think, I guess I've never really thought of it as like we have the ability to create our own logic.
Yeah. It's powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful. Sounds like it.
Yeah. I'm going to give you I'm sorry.
Yeah, give me an example, George.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Like for a long time, I don't think I'm alone in this. Like I pigeonholed myself. Like, okay, I'm a UPS driver. I'm all these other things, but I'm also a UPS driver, and this is the one thing that I do to make money. And it's something that I do every day. So it's something that it's this role that I fill every single day. And I see it at my work, and I see it in people's language. Like they say, people think they are the position at work. People think
Yep.
that they are this thing that they go and do, but that's just a role you play. Okay. So for a long time, and I've known this for a while, but for a long time, I just considered myself to be a truck driver. Recently, like I've become an international podcaster. And let me tell you, like, here's something I did the other day that fucking amazes me. And this is one thing that I love about podcasting. So I didn't know almost anybody. I've known Paul since we were younger, but I didn't know Kevin, and I haven't known a lot of these people that I've talked to. I've never known Rick Strassman in my life. I've read all his books. I love psychedelics. So for me to get to talk to him and introduce myself to him and hear his stories and ask him questions, I always want to ask, that is mind blowing to me. But that's not what I'm going to tell you about. That's part of it. So I listened to everything that he said, and we had an amazing podcast. And during the podcast, he said this. He goes, I was asking him, how is it that you can, judge people's power of their trip? Like, that's such a subjective thing. Like, you are a scientist and you're trying to figure out how hard this guy's tripping. Like, how do you do that? Like, that's so crazy to me. Like, how could you possibly know they can look normal, but they might be tripping their balls off? Like, how do you do it? And so he ran me through like this questionnaire that he built that got rid of a large part of the subjectivity, not all of it, but it was a really elegant set of questions that allowed him to maybe not thoroughly, but to really begin to understand how hard someone's tripping. And during the podcast, he had mentioned that to me. And he says, you know what? This podcast or this particular set of questions is still in use today. However, it's really old, and I've thought of all these ways I could improve it. If there's a grad student out there that would like to help me do it and republish this, I would love if they would call me. Like he just threw that out in the airways. A couple of weeks later, I'm introducing this girl. I'm interviewing this girl, Abigail Calder. She is a grad student, and she's doing all this work on LSD. And so I had mentioned that to her. I go, you know what? She was telling me about how I asked her the same question. Like, so you give these rats LSD, like, how do you know how hard they're tripping? And she's like, oh, well, the head twitch. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Dude, you can't tell how much a rat is tripping by how much its head is twitching. Can you? And we kind of laughed about it. And she told me the story behind it and stuff. And then I told her the story, what Rick Strassman was telling me. And I go, you know what? You'd be perfect to like do this study with Rick Strassman. So I reached out to Rick Strassman, hooked those two up. Those two are currently redoing that guy's study and going to publish it together. Like this girl, she's in her 20s. She has published one paper before, but now she's going to co-publish a paper with Rick Strassman. It's going to change her life, man. I've already talked to her, and she's like, oh my God, all these people are asking me how I hooked up with this. I'm so excited. It's such a great thing. Rick Strassman's all stoked. But that all happened from me interviewing two people. Had I just lived in the world of George Monty as the truck driver, like I would have never helped those people. Like that's what I mean by that's totally illogical or irrational for me to be like, you know what? One day I'm going to talk to Rick Strassman and I'm going to help him change his questionnaire that's been in the world of psychedelics for the last 40 years. And I'm going to help change this girl's life doing it. Like that would be irrational to think that, but I did it. Or maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it's a force working through me. But the moral of the story is if you go and you live in this world in which you want to live and you see yourself, regardless of how illogical or how silly you think it is, like it's tangible. It's real. Like you can do it.
It doesn't sound illogical or irrational to me.
Well, if you I guess it would if
I find logic.
Well,
it would if you were too identifying with your old role, right?
Yes.
If I just identify,
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Someone who's not willing to think it outside the box in that way.
I see guys at my work that are the exact same as me, and I try to always pull them aside. I'm like, dude, you're amazing, man. You could do anything, and they're like, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's the difference. Like, yeah, you can. You totally can. No, I would never do that. I can't do it. I'm just a manager. I'm just a truck driver. I'm just this. And you live with these self-limiting beliefs. And they're like, those are all bullshit. You can live in a different reality.
In your truck driver role, It doesn't sound irrational or illogical. It sounds implausible.
Okay, that's a different definition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably more accurate.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't
Hey,
defy
but hey,
logic.
on a side note, George, good on you. That's awesome that you hooked those two up
Yeah, dude, I'm
to
super
do
stoked.
that. Yeah, that's cool, man.
Would it be illogical to say that I'm about to be a multi-millionaire?
No.
Okay. Because I'm gonna be. No. I haven't got that one yet. But you can baby steps. It's baby steps. What would be illogical then? Like to say that I'm gonna go to Mars. That would be illogical.
No. Well, it depends on how you're
They
going
would
to
say
get.
something like A equals B, B equals C, therefore A cannot equal C. It's kind of illogical, right?
Right. Yeah,
The
that's more.
Pythagorean theorem, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But this, which was a great story. The story you told. It
Yeah.
didn't sound illogical
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
so
maybe,
much power in just connecting people.
yeah, there really is.
Yeah.
Hey, man, you made a difference in both of their lives.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Mm.
And in mine too. Like in some little
Yeah,
way,
sure.
I get to be behind a little study that could be given out forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You make like a little hash mark on the world of psychedelics, man. Like let me put that little right there.
Yeah. Putting your fingerprint on the world, George.
Yeah, your legacy.
There it is, right there.
Yeah.
Spinning around. There's George Monty's fingerprint.
The
Right
closest
there,
thing I
man.
have to that is when I translated this little food menu in Taiwan from Chinese into English because this lady I would go to almost every day for food, and then I went back like 7 years later and she still had my English translation. I was like,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I probably helped 100 foreigners order food there.
Yeah. That's
I don't
awesome.
know. Kevin, I think maybe you have a book out that probably has a fingerprint on so much that you don't even
no one
know.
reads that thing.
Hey, Kevin's got a book coming out that's really interesting, and I'm not even like I'm not married and I've never been divorced, but it was fascinating.
Yeah.
story.
Thanks for your feedback, guys, on that. That was really valuable. And I didn't show it to you yet, but I put a little blurb in the beginning of it, like thanks to Paul and George and Ben of the True Life team for the pre-reading.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
When is it?
So
when
all
is
of the
it gonna drop?
dozens of people that will read it will see your names.
Dozens of people. So my family will know.
Yeah, your family, maybe my family.
And we're back to legacy.
Hey, you know what though? I think it's a I mean, you don't have to be married. I mean, people go through hard breakups, right? And yeah, I experienced one, and so many of those things that you wrote were like, yeah, man, there it is, right there.
Yeah, it's pretty much just about a bad breakup. Doesn't have to be about a marriage necessarily.
Yeah, but it's useful.
Yeah.
Like if I was, if it were 20 something years ago, would have been really handy for me. I guess
Yeah.
the theme is like you'll get to the other side, right? I mean, that's like it sucks now,
You
but
will, but you can't, like, there's a little bit of a war that happens, right? I mean, that's you can sort of give up, and that's kind of the point.
yeah.
Like one thing that I found in there in your book too was the battle you fought against not knowing. Like that seems like fucking incredible. Like, dude, I don't even fucking know. Like you didn't like the
I
not
still don't
knowing
know, man.
part.
I don't know anything.
Dude, right?
It's one of those things you're like, what? I'll just chalk it up till I'll never understand it all the way.
That's hard to do.
But
that would drive me nuts.
it was really hard for me to do. At first, I was like fucking going crazy, like trying to understand it. Like, what the hell happened? I don't really go on and on in the book about it because the point, I try to make it like not about me so much, although I use my stories because people will resonate with it. But it's supposed to be about the reader, so I didn't want to put too much like personal trash into it. And George, I rewrote the intro that has a little bit more personal stuff. Paul's read it.
Nice.
Paul's read it. I don't think I shared it with you yet. But,
nice. Yeah, I'm glad you did that. Like,
no, it's just it's just like, yeah, eventually just had to just accept, like, I'm never going to really understand it. It's just kind of a mystery to some degree. I mean, there's some things that I've worked out, but not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much feedback like you could get from there, and I think maybe that's the reward you get, is getting the feedback from that, and you know how it books have a way, it seems, to affect people in ways you didn't think possible. What artists, people that like your work, your art, your book, your the things you do affect people in ways you don't even understand. And so, you know, I think for me that's what I read into it. I'm like, dude, there were parts where I laughed out loud too. Like you're like, I want to make sure. One quote you wrote in there that I fucking started laughing so hard is like, I have made a promise to always be able to look down and see my dick. I was like,
It's a
yeah,
health
dude.
goal. Yeah.
It's good one, dude.
Yeah.
There was a
I
lot
try
of
to
stuff.
put a little humor in there, you know, I don't want to make it too
Yeah.
heavy. Yeah.
That was, you know what, it was an easy read. You know,
Yeah, that's a feedback I get. They say it's like easy and conversational. I don't want to bog people down in too many, because that's also how I talk. I'm not somebody that's what pisses me off about academics sometimes is academic papers. They'll deliberately use the most obtuse, hard to follow language possible because it's like this ego game between them about who can use the biggest words and be the least comprehensible, which I don't understand. Because if I have a theory and work, I want people to understand it. So why would you intentionally obfuscate your point? But that's what academics do all the time.
yeah, I agree. Shit, I co-authored a paper that I had to read like 4 times before I fully understood it.
Yeah, I did. I had to do it once in my master's program. My advisor was that kind of guy. He just tried to make it confusing.
Yeah, but you know, it's a good read, man. It's simple. It's to the point. You know, like
Thanks, brother.
it's a handbook, really. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, here it is. You know, read this, you'll get through it, and a lot of information, nicely laid out. That's easy to really absorb. It was good. You should write more.
Yeah.
Thanks, Well. Appreciate the feedback and help me get it done.
What's the trick to getting your book on Audible?
It's a little bit of a pain because you have to have really good recording technology. If it's not meeting a certain standard, they'll just reject it. So before you even start doing the whole book, you got to do like 2 or 3 snippets and try to upload those and just make sure that they'll even accept the quality of your audio before you waste your time doing the entire book and then have it not work. So I don't have the right equipment to even do it. So I've got to find some kind of soundproof studio in Bali. I don't know if one such exists because the insulation here in most buildings is just terrible and you hear the noise from outside. And then if you were to do it at home, for anyone listening and thinking about it, the best microphone I've ever used, it's called the Rode Procaster. It's very expensive. I think it's like $400 or $500 just for the microphone. And then you need the whole mixer thing too, which is another few $100s. But if you have the cash for that, that is definitely the best option I've ever used because it really just super high quality. And literally, if someone's talking like 3 feet away, it doesn't pick it up. Like it just cancels everything.
Wow.
So you got to do that. And then once you have the right format, then first of all, it's only available. Audible right now is only available to people in the US, Canada, UK, and Ireland, I think. So it's pretty limited. There are ways around it, but yeah, right now that's the limitation. And then so anyway, so you need the audio, and then you need a cover that's like an album cover image to put up there. And I mean, effectively, that's all you need. So most people hire like pros to do it, but if you want to do it yourself, it's an investment of time and money.
Interesting.
Are you an Audible guy, George?
Yeah, I am. I like all books, but because one of my roles as a truck driver, I figure I can use net time, no extra time, so I can listen to books while I'm working. And so it comes in handy. I like to highlight stuff and write notes, but if I can't do that, you know, I would rather listen to it. I mean, I would rather have it in my hand and hold it and write and have something tangible. And so I have a lot of audiobooks that I have hard copies of, but you know, unfortunately, my time doesn't allow for that. So I've just found a little hack for it.
How much of the time are you actually driving on your day? Like half the time?
Well, it's I walk about 12 miles a day. I do about 140 stops, and I drive 40 miles. So it's like
That's it. I would think it's way more than that.
yeah. Well, it's like, I drive a little bit, get out, do some stuff,
Right.
jump back in. It's just like it's like you have to, you ever have to like move your car from a parking meter? Like that's how far I'm moving. I'm like, okay, I gotta move my car. Okay, I gotta move my car. I gotta move my car.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it's not a whole lot of miles. The longest part of driving is to the building and from the building. So, it's conducive to listening to stuff, and it's fun to listen to music. It's fun to have short conversations, but it's more rewarding to listen to books, and you can get stuff done. And it's an interesting job because I have so much time to think, and I love it. I like being alone. I'm kind of a loner. Like I really enjoy my time alone. And when I'm in my truck, even though I'm forced to have multiple conversations with tons of people that are, hey, how are you? How are your kids? I still have the majority of time to not have anyone taking up real estate in my mind. So my mind is all my own all day. In the beginning, it's tough because you gotta figure out the route, and there's a lot of shit going on there. But once you figure it all out, it's just like the back of your hand. So yeah.
Is your helper all freaked the fuck out yet by you?
No, she quit. So
Okay.
yeah. And most people love me, man. Like it seems crazy, but depending on who my helper is, they get a suite of interesting information to digest every day. So
it's like, I don't know, like,
Hey, Paul, I wanted to ask. Paul, I wanted to ask you something because George had written he wrote this long thing in the group chat. He said something about you're doing cacti like some peyote harvest or what? Like what was that he was referring to?
I grow.
If you're allowed to talk about it.
Yeah,
not just
no. I mean, I grow cactus, a whole bunch of different types, and some of them are, medicinal.
Right.
So I grow some,
and they take a long time to grow those, right?
They do, yeah, they do. But some of them I'm cheating by grafting them on things that grow faster to make them grow faster. But some of them, like San Pedro cactus, like different types of, it's from the family or from the a genre of cactus called Trichocereus. Those things grow pretty quick.
Yeah.
Those things, they grow pretty quick. But like Lophophora, like peyote, that grows painfully slow.
Right.
So I usually I have some Lophophora grafted on various things, Paraschiopsis and other like Trichocereus and things that want to grow fast, so that that plant will put all of its energy into growing the scion, which is the part that's grafted on top, and to make it grow faster. They kind of lose their like some of their like natural shape, but they'll grow incredibly fast if you do that.
Are you doing any ceremonies on your land? It seemed like you had a lot of land out there.
Yeah, no, not yet. Something I want to do though, but but no, I haven't done any
sweat lodge going. That'd be sweet.
No, yeah, no sweat lodges. But
little yurt to sleep in.
Yeah, there's for sure. There's a yurt out there to sleep in.
Oh, so you're almost ready. You just need the sweat lodge.
I'm almost ready. I just need the sweat lodge part. But
all right.
Don't your neighbors, Paul, don't you have neighbors on both sides that are ibogaine and ayahuasca? Don't you have some neighbors on both sides?
Well, so my farm is like 35 minutes from my house. And
Whoa.
and at my house, I have a few neighbors that that have ayahuasca retreats.
It's a
out
nice
here.
little pocket you find yourself in.
Well, I live in a real I live in Haiku, Maui. It's like the northeast shore of Maui.
I'm gonna Google that.
It's actually Haiku, but everybody just calls it Haiku. It's like a rural part of Maui, and just a lot of like alternative lifestyle stuff happening out here. A lot of like holdover hippies from like the 60s and the 70s still exist. I mean, Ram Dass he used to live right down the street from me. And
Yeah.
there are, Ram Dass' house.
You tell me too much, man. I'm gonna be knocking on your door one of these days. I'm
Come
gonna
on
go
over.
to George's house and I'm gonna go to your house.
Dude, trip out. Paul lives in like the wettest part of the world, and he grows cactus. Try to figure that out.
No, that's wild. Oh, there's a forest reserve right near you, huh?
So that's like I'm looking
Several
at
of them.
The Ko'olau.
Yeah.
The Ko'olau forest. Yeah, so that's across the street. My neighbor's backyard is the beginning of the Ko'olau forest.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I live in it's called the Ulu Malu region of Haiku.
Google flights. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Google flights. Come on over, man.
I'm just curious how long the flight is.
But yeah,
I can't afford it now. But someday, when I got more money, I'm going out there.
Yeah, come on out. Yeah, it'll be a good time. We'll have fun, Kev.
Yeah, we will. Bang on some drums. Get a sweat going.
Yeah, so that's like every Friday night. There's the drum circle at Baldwin Beach. It's like 10 minutes from my house. And
nice.
there's the Sunday drum circle at Little Beach, which is on the other side of the island. But there's a place called the Temple of Peace, which is just a few minutes from my house. It's kind of a real I don't know what you would call it, but a lot of hippie types hanging out around there.
Sounds like here.
Yeah, for sure. But there's just it's an interesting spot in the world to live. Haiku, Huelo, Kailua, this whole side of Maui right here.
It's a short 26 hours from me.
Got to go to Japan first, or they got direct flights?
It looks like either the Philippines or Korea.
Oh, nice. Yeah, 26 hours. So if you come, you got to stay for a little while, right? Just fly that way.
I wouldn't come for a weekend. That'd be a little too crazy.
That'd be a little too much. But so
I'll bring a tent. I'll put a tent on your land or something if that's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You can stay in the yurt.
Sweet.
Yeah, like any of you guys. You too, George.
Nice, man.
I'm in the process of working the money situation out, so it may happen the next year.
Yeah, come on out.
You do a book tour when you go over there.
Right.
Yeah, I gotta do a book tour so I can get that readership from 2 dozen up to 4.
Everybody buy Kevin's book. Buy his first book, Young,
What's up?
Successful, and Miserable. And buy his what's the title of your second book?
So She Left You.
So She Left You. Ladies and gentlemen, book's coming out.
Yeah.
Book's coming out soon.
Yeah. But on my farm, my neighbors are interesting too. Like one of them is running an organic. He's a rabbi and is running a kosher organic farm. And then on the other side of me is a billionaire. And so I'm in the middle.
I'll just leave some books on his doorstep, and then hopefully it gives me a call. He can promote it for me.
Yeah, come on out. I think it'd be cool. We could
Who else is there? Any else of the crew out there? I mean, you and George are the only Hawaii-based ones. Just wondering if there are any too.
George and I. No, I think the other guys.
George, where do you live in relation to Paul?
I live on Oahu, so I live in island.
Oh, in the city.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's they're trying to make sure their island doesn't become like this island,
You mean with the
which is
homeless
crowded.
people?
I don't know.
No,
How's your homeless population over there, Paul?
it's bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's bad. It's it's becoming it's a real problem. It's a real problem.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think homelessness, like, in a lot of places in America, is becoming a real problem, or has been a real problem. But yeah, we have our fair
Yeah.
share here.
yeah. What about in Bali? What's it look like over there, Kev?
You don't see homeless people really right now, because I think Bali's one of the richer places,
Hmm.
and culturally, it's not inconceivable that they would be homeless, but it's very hard to imagine because the locals here, they've had the compounds in their family for generations. So the only way someone can really be homeless is if they decide to leave Bali and sort of renounce their family and go elsewhere, and that doesn't succeed. Or if they come from like other parts of Indonesia, there people were struggling big time last year. I don't know. You didn't see homeless people on the streets, but because of COVID and like tourism collapsed, and I think it's 70 or 80% of the economy of the island of Bali is tourism. So there was a ton of unemployed people and resorts that just tanked and went out of business. And you would be driving down the streets and see the one out of every two resorts was just shut down or empty. And I think people would kind of like live in them that were homeless, because you would drive by and you would see people, like, you'd see clothes hung up on some of the, the bamboo poles. So I think that's kind of what they would do. They would sort of hide it so you didn't see it and it wasn't in your face. And there were sometimes begging, but it wasn't over the top as you would see in other Asian countries.
Yeah, I was painting a doomsday scenario for Paul and Ben the other day, and since I had so much fun doing it, I think I'll maybe paint a picture for you, Kevin. What do you think
Okay.
about? I think you're going to see an incredible continuing rise in homelessness. I think you're going to see a continual rise in people in the streets, crime, housing rates are going to go up. I think you're going to see a somewhat of a Great Depression begin to take over the United States. And when that happens, I think you're going to see a hard swing to the right. And all these people are going to be, we're going to see a return to the mental institutes. You're going to see people getting swept up by cops and taken to camps and people are going to cheer for it. People are going to be excited about it because there's going to be so much crime in the streets. There's going to be so many homeless people. There's going to be so much crap going on that people are going to be sick and tired of it, and they're going to want something done. They're going to demand it to happen. This was kind of a picture that I was painting for Paul and Ben. And while they may or may not wholeheartedly agree with me, like I think that they do see some tough times coming. Do you think it's too much of a doom and gloom scenario to follow what I was saying?
No, I might even be even more gloomier than you.
Oh,
because in my doom and gloom scenario, the rise of the right that you're describing would be impossible, because they will have completely controlled information, online sources, and what is considered misinformation, and any speech that would be against whatever the current regime is gradually going to be like banned or at least censored. So there's nowhere for you to even express your discontent in a public way. And they're going to completely control money. They're already starting to roll out the CBDCs. They want to control what you spend. So you're going to have a carbon tax limit on the CBDCs that you receive from government. So things will be given a different carbon value, right? So meat's probably going to be like one of the highest. And then you'll have the bug juice option, which will be almost none. So, and the CBDCs, whatever you get, it's going to be kind of a universal basic income thing. They're going to just distribute this thing eventually, I think. And then that will it'll be a gradual descent into more and more poverty, because that thing that you're going to get every month from the government for your rent, because you're not going to be allowed to own a home, for your rent and whatever else, will gradually decline in value, and your living standards will gradually decrease. And there will be no really effective way to rebel against it. So yeah, that's even gloomier, I think, than what you said.
What's your take on that, Paul?
I don't know. I mean, what's your timeline on this, Kev?
It's a generation, like I'd say it's 10, 20 years. Yeah.
10, 20 years. I mean, I can see something like that happening, but 40, 50 years. I think you were saying, George, like, what did you say, by 2030?
I think by 2030, you're going to see the euro, the euro as a monetary currency be folded, and you're going to see the CBDCs in Europe by 2030.
So what's your timetable on the scenario you just laid out?
Me?
Yeah, George.
I see that happening. I see people being rounded up by 2030. Maybe not in every state, but if you just listen to the fringes, and like if you listen to some stories that are people telling online, like you hear oh yeah, like my car got robbed 3 times. That's nothing. My car got robbed 8 times. Where I'm in Hawaii, like I delivered to a really nice neighborhood. Like every house there is $1 million. And they have break-ins in broad daylight. There was a lady that got tied up in her house. Like the crime is out of control. And this is the first time I've ever seen homeless people pushing into these neighborhoods. I'm talking like deep in Manoa Valley, Paul. Like there's like there's starting to be homeless people at bus stops deep in the valley. And I'm like, how does this person even get here? It's just pouring down rain here all the time. It's a horrible spot to be if you're homeless. But like I look at where I am as an area that's almost unscathed from the ideas of downtowns being burned and cities, like the Chapo city being aligned. Like I live in a spot that's really hard to get to unless your city sends someone here. But yeah, if I can see it here, the lens that I see happening, I could see people getting rounded up and taken homeless people being taken away and put in camps, and people would cheer for it by 2030.
You live in Mililani?
Yeah, and when I say here, I mean in Hawaii. I think you could see homeless people being rounded up and taken to the homeless camps by 2030.
I don't think so. Not in Hawaii, but there might be other places in America where that might happen, but maybe like Florida, or Texas. But I don't see that happening like here in Hawaii. There's this thing, George, called the Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just, it's hard for me to see like the scenario that you lay out, actually playing out. Because, there is the Bill of Rights and there is the Constitution. And you just can't round up people out of the streets and, throw them into, encampments or prison or,
people's rights get violated all the time, man. I would disagree with that. I think
I'm not saying people's civil rights don't get violated all the time. They do, but like you're talking about in mass.
They just locked everybody in their houses for a year. And they did
it.
Yeah,
the HIPAA thing too. One example.
Yeah, all they did was tell people on, like they broadcasted it on television. They went and said it everywhere. You must lock down. I got kicked out of a park with my daughter. Cops came up to me and threatened to take me to jail if I didn't leave the park. Like that's pretty close, man. That's really, really close to being rounded up. And I didn't even do anything. I'm there with an 8-year-old girl, and a cop comes to me and is like, I'm going to take you to jail if you don't leave here. Like that, is that the Bill of Rights? Like how did the Bill of Rights protect me there?
Well, I mean,
I didn't even do anything.
Emergencies are used to override these things.
Without a doubt. And the same thing will be used. The same thing will be used. If something happens once, it may never happen again. If it happens twice, it'll definitely happen again. And the use of emergency powers, the same way governors are using emergency powers, is the same way that our president uses wartime powers, right? When there's a wartime president, it allows him to step over the Bill of Rights. It allows him to step over Congress. He's the commander in chief in an emergency in a wartime. And the same thing for a city. Whenever there's an emergency, a national disaster, you need not obey your constitutional rights. There's emergency powers, and the person in charge is a dictator. And if you look at, I don't know if the state of Hawaii is still in a state of emergency, but I know that California and New York are. And that allows them to not pay any attention to your rights be damned. So while we do have these potential stops in order, the emergency, the idea of an emergency, it doesn't even have to be a real emergency. They just have to claim there's an emergency, and they got the powers just like that. So I think that that's something that's plausible.
Well, I mean, I think they were trying to get people to stay home, but if you worked in emergency services, you could leave your house. If you were in a job that required the function of society or government to continue, then you were allowed to leave your house. If you needed to go grocery shopping, you were allowed to leave your house.
The key word is allowed. Like, who are they to allow you to do anything? Like,
right. Well, you're taking something that was like the exception to what's happening in the world and kind of maybe trying to say that it can be normalized. And I don't think that that's the case.
How many people are still wearing masks? Like, they've normalized it. It is normal.
People can wear masks.
Yeah.
There's no mask mandates here in Hawaii. There's no mask mandates, but people wear masks. People were wearing masks before.
Yeah, but a lot more are wearing masks now.
What's wrong with that?
I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. What I'm saying is that because this happened, more people are doing it, and they're giving the illusion of it. They're bringing it into quote unquote normality. And so if that can happen, okay, so if that can happen, if we can bring masks, if we can bring this new sort of behavior into the world of normalcy, the new normal. Hey, here's this new normal. Guess what? There's going to be another pandemic. Are pandemics going to be normal? And if they are normal, do the emergency powers become normal? And does the abuse of power become normal? Like, it's a slippery slope.
I don't know about that, man. Look, STDs broke out in the 70s and people wore condoms, right? People are dying in car accidents because they're they became stronger and faster. And so people wear seatbelts, right? People are cracking their heads open on motorcycles. And so people wear helmets. You know, people are blowing planes up out of the sky or crashing them in the buildings. So people walk through metal detectors. You know, like would you account for all those things?
Well, first off, I'm glad you brought that up, because now it's normal to walk through a metal detector at an airport. Now that's normal. That's a power that it didn't used to be that way, but now it's normal to do it, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of things, George, that used to not be that way.
I know. And I'm saying the use of emergency powers is something that is become the new normal. And because of that, because people can use these powers, they are subverting the Bill of Rights. They are subverting this very thing that you and I love that's supposed to keep us free. They're subverting that.
Yeah, but the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, like, don't matter at all if everybody's dead or dying.
I don't think I'm making that case.
Well, I'm making that case. Right?
Okay.
So if society is under threat from a virus or a bacteria or another society waging war, then there are different rules, right? Because you have to be able to protect the people first. Without the people, you got nothing, right? You're just a guy. You're just a guy standing next to a tree or whatever.
No.
Yeah, I don't think most people would disagree with that, right? But I think the fear is that it stays that way, right? Like with what is it called? The HIPAA Act. I forget what it stands for, but it's some Health Information Privacy Act, I think it is, where you used to not be allowed to ask people about their health. It was illegal, but that's just gone because it's like, oh, what's your vaccine status everywhere? Like, they're allowed to ask you and you have to answer or be kind of excluded. So that's kind of just, I think, permanently gone. I think people stop upholding that.
A lot of them.
So I guess
They tried
that's the
to
fear.
force
Like, okay, that's a small thing, right? And then we're talking about Bill of Rights, which is a much bigger thing. And then at what point does a temporary violation just stay? Like, is that just the new normal, and then we're not going back from it? I think that's probably the concern.
They tried to force you to get a vaccine to go to work.
When they turned it into law.
They tried to make it a law that you had to get a vaccine that was never ever tested. They took it. They made it the law of the land. Joe Biden said everybody had to do it.
It's not
they made
a law.
It like de facto.
He did.
No, it was de facto. It wasn't really a law.
It's not a law.
Was it?
No, there's no law.
Well, the people are being sued about it. I don't know. I don't think it was ever a law. But
I think there was like insane pressure on it. Like he did try to say that they were going to like fine companies larger than a certain amount of employees that didn't do that. I don't know if that was struck down in court though. Like I don't know if that was actually
by the Supreme Court.
Authority
it was struck down in court. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why.
Sorry, 1 second.
Why would it give it to the Supreme Court though?
There are guardrails, and those guardrails will protect homeless people as well.
Well, I would say that hopefully, I mean, I hope you're right. But if you look at all the people that got forcefully vaccinated because they thought they were going to lose their job, if the same thing is true, there would be tons of people rounded up before they fought it. Like it had to go to the Supreme Court to get struck down. And like it doesn't go to the Supreme Court in a day. It takes a long time to get there.
Right.
And so in that meantime, a lot of people could be rounded up in that time, right? The same way a lot of people got the vaccine. Yeah.
Yeah,
they're just doing it now, right? They're like the payments. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know anybody who was forcefully vaccinated, George.
I do. I know tons of people.
Really, that were grabbed and forcefully vaccinated against their own will?
It's funny that you have such a limited idea of force, bro. Force does not have to be this
fine line.
Yeah, like I see what you're doing. However, it's either I think it's a poor argument to define terms like that. Like force can be a lot of things. Like if I say I'm going to take your paycheck away and you'll never be able to provide for your family, is that force? It's kind of like a gentle force. I don't know. Like I disagree. I think if someone threatens me, that's a use of force. I've been fired for cussing at people and they told me I was being violent, like I was being forceful. So I think that we could argue the definition, but no one forced me. No one grabbed my hands and forced it. But lots of people were told they will lose their livelihood. And I consider that to be force.
That's not forceful.
Well, coerce is the word, right? It's
coerced,
not actually force. It's coerced.
Coerced. Yeah, that's the right word. And rules within
which is still illegal, by the way. You're not supposed to coerce people to do anything medical.
Rules with, and you're right. Rules within a corporation are different than actual laws, George.
And that's why it got struck down, because Joe Biden doesn't have the right to tell corporations what to do. But that's exactly what he tried to do by using OSHA.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. Those guardrails that provided those protections through the Supreme Court will provide protections for homeless people.
Not if the people want the homeless people gone. Not if they're telling their sheriff, like, hey, we want these people out of here. I want them gone. Like then
people want those people out of here.
Sorry?
Those people already want those people out of there, George.
I know.
Can't go
That's why I'm saying it's close.
Well, I mean, you were just telling me that if it's what the people want, the people already want it, but it's not happening. Right? People, and it's not necessarily that people want these guys rounded up and taken somewhere. They want solutions to a problem.
Right. I agree.
That's what the people want.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Like I said, those same guardrails will protect homeless people.
I hope you're right, man. Like I don't have as much faith in it, man. Like I hope you're right. I don't have as much faith in the system as you do.
Oh, I don't have a hell of a lot of faith in the system, George.
Then how do you base your argument on the rules then? Like if you don't believe the system will work, why would it work?
Well, that's one aspect of the system that I actually have some faith in, but there are a lot of parts of the system that I have absolutely no faith in, but this one I do.
Well, I wish I had the faith in there that you did. I just look at history and I see people that when people have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And if you look at the way the society is turning on itself, we can argue why it is, but the fact is that it is happening. And it seems there's an ever deeper divide. Like you got like Kanye versus the Jews and blacks versus white and gay versus straight. Like everybody is fighting amongst themselves because they don't have anything, right? When a rising tide lifts all boats, and when everybody has money, there's still the same underlying hatred, but everybody feels like, okay, well, I have enough to eat, I have a house. But when you start taking that shit away layer by layer by layer, you start unveiling the animal that is hidden underneath the human skin, and people start fighting. And I think that's what's going to happen. They turn on the weakest people. The weakest people in society get picked on and wrecked and tore up first. That's a fact. And what the weakest people in our society are the homeless people. Those people are going to be rounded up. They're the first ones to go. And I could see people rallying around that. If you look at what happened in World War II, the first thing they do is let's dehumanize these people. The first thing that happens in any war, the first casualty of war is the truth. The next thing you do when you want to get rid of somebody is you dehumanize them. And I can already see people looking at homeless people like these people are animals. They're just coming around stealing stuff. Like, and it scares the shit out of me, but like I can see it happening. And I can see cops like, yeah, fuck these people, dude. They're just wrecking everything. Let's get rid of them. And when that happens, the guardrails be damned.
No, I mean, the guardrails never be damned. And I would argue that the most vulnerable of our society is children, not homeless. And there are a lot of protections out there and you think about it, especially here in Hawaii, George.
Yeah.
Where family is a big deal.
Yeah.
And, like even here, when they were moving some homeless, like there was some homeless down at a beach park in Kahului, and the county said, okay, we're going to clean this area up. And so you basically have they gave them 5 weeks or 5 days to try to relocate somewhere before they came down with front loaders and dump trucks and all kinds of stuff to kind of clean the place up. But there were so many people down there that were like, these are our family. Like, this is my cousin here. These are my family here, that are going through hard times and have nowhere else to go. And so they're camping out down here at Kanaha Beach. And so those same people are going to come to the defense of their homeless family members when it's time for, the brown shirts to round them all up, George.
Like I said, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But I don't see the hippie communes coming to save them, man.
What do you mean the hippie communes? The hippie communes aren't going to come in to save them.
I thought you said you were right by a hippie beach. All the hippies were doing drum circles down there.
I'm surrounded by.
Yeah, no, keep doing drum circles. That's what we gotta do. Just keep doing drum circles and forget about all this shit.
Right.
That's the Luciferian way, man.
Well, keep in mind that a lot of those hippies down there at Baldwin Beach on Fridays, drum circling and freaking fire dancing and hula hooping and juggling and doing all that stuff that that they do down there. A lot of them are homeless as well.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But but if you go down, I don't know, you got to go down 6 more beaches to make it to Kanaha Beach. Kanaha Beach Park is in front of the airport. So the planes take off over it all day.
Is that where the homeless live?
That's where that's where they used to be. They're not there anymore. Now they're across the street from Ho'okipa Beach Park at old Maui High School, which has been long abandoned. I think they turned part of it into some office buildings, but most of it is abandoned.
But you know what? You know where they're not at? They're not in front of the $1 million homes. They're not in Waikiki. They're not in front of the commercial properties. Because when they are, I'll give you an example. In Waikiki, the homeless got so bad, they would a lot of homeless people were attacking some of the tourists and stuff. And the tourist lobby got together and said, this is bullshit. This is enough. And you know what? Now, if you're a homeless person down there, the cops will chase you out of there. If you try to lay down on the sidewalk or you're loitering in front of an establishment, the cops are going to chase you out of there. You could say that it's just to protect the tourist dollar, but it's still one step. Like, I believe that there is a lot of animosity between the world of tourism and the homeless people that sit in front of the hotels. And I think a lot of those people that own those hotels sure wish those homeless people weren't there. And in fact, they've gone as far as to lobby the police, to give the police money. Hey, I want these people gone. I don't care where they go. Get them the hell out of here. Like, that's pretty close, man. That's pretty close to seeing those people as animals. That's pretty close as to seeing them not as humans. And they're already giving money to move them to different places. It's just one step further to put them in a cage.
It's not.
Yeah, that's what they do here. There's a stray dog problem in Bali, and whenever they congregate too close to the hotels, every once in a while they just go and poison them all.
I don't see any family members coming down and being like, hey, this is my cousin standing in front of the Hilton. Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is the guy like at a full-on camp and everything set up in front of the Hilton, or is he just hanging out with like a sleeping bag and crashing up, leaning up against the wall?
I think he has a tent inside his shopping cart.
Yeah, but is that tent set up?
Must
No,
be a tiny tent.
that's inside the shopping cart, and it's not set up in front of the Hilton. People are crashing there, probably panhandling.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're still homeless people, right?
For sure.
And they're still being pushed out by people that do not want them there. They hate them.
It's not illegal to be homeless.
I agree. I'm on your side with this.
Yeah.
I'm on your side. I'm telling you, I see that happening. And for me, like, how come you don't think it's that far of a step? Like, the cops are moving these people out of the way like they're nothing. Like, get out of here. The homeless people are maybe punching people and stuff, and
they're
threatening
loitering
them, but
property.
is that a real problem though? If a homeless person punches people or like kicks them, or is like, give me some money, I'm going to punch you in the face. Is that a problem
on private property, right? So that's private property.
The sidewalk is not. That's the loophole. They used to sleep on the sidewalk because the sidewalk is public property, and that's what they used to claim. And so they had a tough time getting rid of homeless people because they could camp, they could physically pitch their tent on the sidewalk, and it wasn't illegal. So they had to figure out ways to make that illegal. And that's very similar to, like, that's what I'm saying. If they can find ways to do that, I mean, what's to stop them from finding ways just to put them in a camp?
I mean, that's a huge stretch. It's like saying that because you beat up somebody that you're capable of committing murder. I
think that happens all the time in the courts. Like, if you're arrested for punching somebody, like, you could go to prison for being like that. They start slapping on fake charges like, oh, this guy's a menace to society, or this guy's a danger to himself and other people. And then you spit on a cop, or you know what I mean? The cop's like, yeah, fuck this guy, man. I could see that happening.
I have no doubt, George, that you could see that happening.
You couldn't see that happening?
That they're going to start rounding up homeless people, like because
by 2030,
because they move people, and keep in mind that in the state of Hawaii, you don't fuck with tourism. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be a local, you could be wealthy, you could be homeless. You start doing things that fuck with tourism, there's going to be repercussions for that, right?
Yeah.
Because this state survives on tourism.
Yep.
It's our number one industry, and second place isn't even close.
Yes.
So
100%.
So I believe that they're moving people. That you see any skateboarders in Waikiki anymore? No, because they got rid of them too. Right, but that doesn't mean, because they got skateboarders out of Waikiki, that they're going to start rounding up skateboarders and throwing them in encampments.
Okay, but here's the problem with what you said. You said you don't fuck with tourism in Hawaii because tourism's number one, right? So by saying that, are you saying that anybody who fucks with your money is going to get dealt with? Is that what you mean by saying that?
It's not just an individual's money. It's all of our money, George, yours included.
Yes, that's right. Would you even consider it well-being?
I mean, the state of Hawaii has what, 1.3 million people living in it?
Yeah.
and most of them, unless you're native Hawaiian, are here solely because of tourism.
Yeah, so they're fucking with our well-being, god damn it.
They are, but
Yeah.
you know,
Let's get rid
as
of
a
them, man.
as a well, they are if they're in front of the outrigger, or
Huh.
if they're in front of, they're at Aloha Tower.
So we should put them in a camp somewhere far away, right?
No, we shouldn't.
Well,
No.
then why
No, we
don't
just don't call it a camp. Just call it a home, and then the problem goes away.
we're already doing it, man. Like we just don't call it. You're right. We don't call it a camp. We're already doing it. Like that's why they're not in front of That's why they're not in front of Waikiki. That's why they're not in front of the high-end places in Maui, because they're in front of the beach and the airport in Maui. Like they're already put in a spot. It's already happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's like I don't know if you were living in Hawaii when there was like this crackdown on skateboarders in Waikiki, right?
No,
It was
I
like
think I
always
was.
on the news because like guys were out there just skating and using like the hotel, whatever, concrete and rails and everything else to skate, and their skateboards are flying out in the street and cracking tourists in the shins and whatever. It took a few complaints and all those guys were gone, right? But that's when, okay, here's the conspiracy, right?
Right.
That's when they really started building freaking skate parks in Honolulu and Waikiki, George. So they put them all there. Maybe if the city spent some money, or the county,
camp
and built, but you can't call it a camp, right, Kev? Don't call it a camp.
I think you should call it. I think you should call them mansions.
Yeah.
I think that's the future. The do nothing or wait, own nothing and be happy. They're just gonna call them all mansions.
Yeah.
Wherever we live.
That's a marketing 101. I love it.
Or towers, right? That's a good
Or
one.
towers. Yeah.
A tower has kind of a negative connotation to it, though. Like when I think of like a tower, like a memory hole,
but yeah,
a project.
it sounds a little bit like a project. A tower.
Definitely don't give it a number.
Yeah, you mean the homeless person?
Yeah, you don't want to be in mansion 3B, right? It's gotta have a name.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You just, I guess if you called it something different, then maybe they would, it would be okay.
Maybe you put a slogan that says "Work sets you free" over it. You know what I mean?
A lot of power in words.
Yeah.
They could have a membership. I don't know.
A membership.
Yeah, membership. A membership to a private mansion club. I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have the amenities you think it does, but
no.
But it's still a mansion.
Yeah.
It's got natural amenities.
Natural. Yeah. I don't know, but I just don't see it going from that. Like when you say like them removing, well, shit, I remember when they were like, down in Waikiki. Is Waikiki by Night still down there, George, the strip club?
Man, I haven't been down to Waikiki. I haven't been at Waikiki in probably 3 months, man. And I never go down there at night, so I don't know.
Because there used to be a bunch down there, like right in Waikiki, and and then again, tourists are like, damn, like right across the street, Aloha Marketplace.
Oh, that's gone, man. That's completely gone. It's a huge mall now.
Right.
Yeah.
It used to have Deja Vu showgirls in it. Right. And then that was then the city was like, oh, we got to get rid of that. So they got rid of it.
Right.
And then across the street was Waikiki by Night, was upstairs. And
they moved all that towards
the ward.
Yep.
And so they found a place, but the city and the county have been working really hard at like keeping, Waikiki and parts of Honolulu
clean,
free of all that stuff. Homeless people, skateboarders, strippers, drug dealers.
Yeah.
And so, I just don't see it as being like, because they're doing that they're going to start building encampments for, a stripper encampment. That'd be cool. Like I might even want to visit.
Encampment?
Yeah.
That one you might need a membership for.
That one. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Very expensive.
Yes.
You just got to get Donald Trump to market the thing. We got the best amenities, the best.
There's a Trump Tower down there.
Yeah.
There is. I remember when they were building that. I I was wiring Roy's restaurant right across the street from it
Yeah.
while they were building that. And I remember everybody's like, "I can't believe they're building a Trump Tower here," and they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think it sold out like the second day or something.
but so guess what? So that was Lewis Street, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and so back in the day, Lewis Street was filled with, ladies of the night, and they all got run out of there quick,
Mm.
right? Like that was like, that didn't take very long before they were running all those women out of there. And then they turned it into like the Waikiki Beach Walk. And so it's like, I remember that place from being something completely different. And, it was prostitutes, and it was, it was a lot of drugs, and, and homeless people, down there. And, like Fort DeRussy Park was a mess.
Right.
And, then they come in and they clean it all up. Just like they got rid of the homeless people in front of the outrigger.
What if we take it out of Hawaii? Like, do you think it's possible that this could happen maybe in some parts that aren't as nice as Hawaii? Like
I
maybe
told you, like, I think it could happen in Florida.
in
Just
Chicago,
because of the political
big
atmosphere.
cities?
No, Chicago, I don't think so. Florida, Texas, I think it could happen. Those two places come to mind.
Well, Chicago, the weather's going to take care of the problem if it happens there.
Good point.
It's fucking freezing for half the year.
You're from
Below
Chicago,
zero.
aren't you, Kev?
I'm not. My girlfriend's
No.
from Chicago.
Your girlfriend's from. She was missing Chicago.
It's like the most hellish place in America. I don't understand. Like, I'm like, why would you stay there? It's fucking awfully. It's like ridiculously humid from July to September, and then you have like one good month, and then it's -0 from like November to May. They only have like 2 nice months a year. It's just so extreme.
Yeah, I've never been.
What does Chicago mean?
Like,
Huh?
I think about the people that die in Chicago. Like, isn't there something like?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of gun violence there.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah. And apparently it's similar to what you were saying about Hawaii. It used to be concentrated to the city of Chicago in certain areas that everyone knows don't go down there because a lot of, drug trade and gangs and stuff. But I guess that's now slowly spread to the suburbs, even like an hour outside, because she's from an hour outside of Chicago, where it's sort of the more suburban America. And even there, they're getting an uptick in, like, not so much gun violence, but, like theft and rapes. I guess some girl was raped in broad daylight a couple months ago in a park near her house. So they're seeing that. It's anecdotal, though. I don't know if anyone's really measured it, but her family is seeing an uptick and stuff in their neighborhood.
That's what I mean. Like, maybe this is an unfair characterization, and I'm not trying to be unfair or look down on anybody or anything. Like, when I see homeless, and I see that as like the cancer of our community, not because they're cancerous, but because we as a community are failing. Like the homeless population that continues to get bigger and bigger is a direct reflection of our inability to solve this problem of our society. Like it's not one thing, it's like tons of things. It's like drugs, family crisis, socioeconomic background, education. It's all of these things. It's abuse, drug, it's all these things. And then for some reason, someone finally cracks and then they can't make it. But that problem is growing so fast. It's like cancer, and it's spreading. The same way cancer spreads through the body, so too does this socioeconomic problem spread through our country. And if we don't try to fix it, if we don't fix it at all, like it's going to continue to spread until it affects. It's just going to continue to spread. And like, look at housing. Like, how is a kid supposed to buy? The median price I read was something like $550,000. How is a kid that's like 17 supposed to be like, okay, I'm gonna probably buy a $550,000 house? It just seems to me.
Yeah, it's worse. It's worse in America too, because kids they go into debt for 4 years. Yeah, so they're coming out of college at the age of 22, and they're already at like negative 150 grand. And
Yeah.
that's a huge, like, so much of the economy is debt servicing. Those people would normally be buying starter homes a few years later, and now they can't do it till they're like 35.
Yeah, and that seems to me a pattern that's going to continue. Like if you like that's been happening since '08. Like why would it stop now? And the more it goes up, the more people we lose. We're losing through the cracks, losing through the cracks. And so pretty soon there's more people that fell through the cracks than there are that haven't fell through the cracks. And what do these people do? They rise up.
So I
They rise up.
think it got cut off.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost your mic right there. And that's what I mean. Like when all of a sudden the more and more people are losing their way, they find themselves in a spot where they can no longer be a productive member of society. Like pretty soon that's going to outnumber the people that are, or at least the heightened level of that is going to start scaring the people that are. And that's why you see an uptick in crime, an uptick in homelessness. And how do you get rid of that? Well, you can be sure that the leaders aren't going to stop doing what they're doing. Like they've never done that. You can be sure that the banks are not going to start giving people money. You can be sure that the corruption's not going to stop. And so if none of those things stop, why wouldn't we be losing more and more people? And if we lose more and more people, there's going to have to be a way to get rid of them. Like I just see that like that's my mindset. Like I'm not saying I want this to happen or I think it should happen, but I'm saying that I think that the natural order is going to be more and more homeless people, more and more crime, because the socioeconomic society is breaking down. And when that does, the only thing left to do is to get rid of those people. That's going to be the quick fix that people go for.
Yeah, well, I mean, this country's been actively disenfranchising people for a long time.
Yeah.
And now you have a bunch of people that are actively doing it to themselves. And that's a problem. Like we need people participating in society and not dropping out. But it's so hard for people to stay involved and to want to like be productive because they're not seeing their output. It's not being reflected in what they're earning, for their efforts. And people are choosing to jump off the hamster wheel and to go do something else, I mean, there's been a huge, surge in like van life, right? Where people that are like, hey, I'm not completely dropping out of society, but I'm one step away.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Oh, I've dropped out for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure you have. And
Yeah.
but
I was like, fuck all this. I'm not doing it anymore.
yeah,
I'd rather be homeless than deal with shit. That was really the thinking.
exactly. And so there's you're not alone, Kev. There's a lot of people out there that are tired of it. For different reasons than you, but still tired of it.
I think most people, right?
Well, I don't know, George, you're going pretty hard at it.
I hate it, bro. Like I hate leaving my family every day. I hate working 80 hours a week. Like I find like, and maybe this is what I do. Like I have to find ways to not hate it. So on my route,
You have to gamify it, right? You gamify your job a bit. I used to
man.
do that. Yeah.
Dude, I bring little presents for all the kids on my route. Hey, how's school going?
That's
I bring a
nice.
little Rubik's Cube, and like I listen to books all day. Like I'm tuning out as much as I possibly can. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, George, man, but
Yeah.
let me just ask you.
Okay.
So, what do you hate about your job? The actual act of delivering packages for people, or do you hate the corporate structure that you work in?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love a lot of things. I don't mind what I do. I love talking to people. and I love that I have an honest living, but I hate the fact that I'm looked at as a number. And I hate it with such a passion that I've been fired multiple times. I hate it with such a passion. I've told my supervisors go fuck themselves. I hate it with such a passion that I've figured out a way to make the people sitting across from me telling me I'm a number to hate themselves. Like, that's how much I hate it. And it took a long time to get there, but you could do it. And that was kind of rewarding, actually. But I hate that part. I hate the fact that we look at people like numbers and that the people are being trained to do that. Like, young men and women go through a management process where they learn to look at this other person as less than human. They look at their production numbers. Hey, they don't care if your kid died. They don't care if something happened to you. You know what? You didn't perform like you did yesterday. Why not? Like, I hate that. And that is something that is happening across the board with multinational corporations, and it's even trickled down into small mom and pop shops. So I love being a mailman, a UPS driver. I love that part of it. I love providing service to people. I hate being told I'm a number.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right?
Yeah, it is.
Is that they've taken like a job, and maybe, if our society was purely entrepreneurial,
yeah,
and let's say there was no multinational corporations or even large corporations, that people would perform jobs that seem relatively mundane and be happy about it. But when you add all the layers of like mathematics that dictate what you're going to get paid based on what like what social services can you qualify for so we can pay you less. How can we take advantage of overtime laws to work in our favor? With these things, the way that these corporations are set up to take advantage of people, nobody likes that.
Yeah,
right? That's the shitty part of working. But if there was no UPS and it was you delivering packages the Manoa Valley, and these things showed up at some distribution place where you can use your own vehicle and go out and deliver them, and you got the money to do it, then all of a sudden that seemingly mundane job turns into something that's rewarding. But the way it's set up now, with everybody on the wheel, is that they've shaped tasks and duties and jobs in such a manner that they're only thinking about profit, and they're not thinking about the quality of the job or the people who perform the jobs. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And I think that
I saw that happen pretty blatantly once in my old job, because we had this service center in Poland that did like the mundane work or whatever. And I don't know exactly what they get paid, but I'm sure it's probably at least a third or less of what the Swiss salaries were. And one time, we'd often invite them over to come to the Swiss office. And I wasn't there, but I had like a couple of these people on my team that they worked on the same client that I was running. And so they told me about it. I was on pretty good terms with the Polish colleagues. And there was some meeting where it was them in there with the rest of the Swiss team and the partner. And the partner literally said, yeah, we got the Polish service center to save on cost, like in front of the whole company. And they just felt like pieces of shit after that. Like, it just felt like nothing. I'm like, how are you gonna keep them motivated if you're talking about them like that, especially in front of a group? And it's like everyone knew it. I mean, they knew that their jobs only existed because they tried to save costs, but they just put a voice to it like that, and it's just kind of insulting.
Yeah, because they don't give a fuck.
Nah.
Because
in their mind, these people are just replaceable, right? They say whatever they want, so they get discouraged and quit. All right, I got 50 other people I can hire.
Yeah, that's the thing. People are jumping off the hamster wheel, but there's a whole freaking line of them ready to jump on.
Yeah.
Right. And
we're bringing them here. Like we're labor is used as a whipsaw from one country to another. And so when one country has labor laws, we bring in people that will gladly take those jobs for less, or we'll just move the entire industry to a third world country where there are no labor laws. So yeah, like the corporate structure knows no boundaries, and it uses boundaries to whipsaw and to silence the people that live in those countries.
Yeah, well, I mean, corporations really only have one rule, and that's to serve itself.
Yes,
Yeah.
Citizens
Well said.
we could change everything by just getting rid of Citizens United. I mean, not everything, but a large part of it, right? Like if a corporate was not a person, like, and it shouldn't be, that's ridiculous. If we got rid of that, if you got rid of Citizens United and you changed a company's charter to the number one thing is not to look out for the shareholders, but to look out for the well-being of the employees and to make
And look
money
beyond
for the
one quarter too.
yeah. Like I think that you could fundamentally change society with a stroke of a pen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and you could really change society with a few strokes of a pen.
Yeah.
But I mean, the will isn't there.
That's a great point. They have the potential, but not the will. A lot of gatekeepers in front of that will.
Most people are still basically predominantly in fear, right?
Yes.
Until that changes, we're not going to have any meaningful change.
Yeah.
Because fear will keep people quiet. So
Yep.
they may feel these things that we're talking about, but they're not going to do anything because they're afraid they're not going to be able to support their family or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. Not everybody can be like George and go tell their supervisors to go fuck themselves.
Yeah, not everyone's like me. I just cut everything and no family, no anything, no one to take care of and leave. And everyone has that choice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are envious of that though, Kev.
Yeah. How did that's what your whole first book is about, right?
No, I didn't. I guess I did it multiple times, quite frankly.
Yeah.
That was just the time when I wrote it. That was once where I quit, but then I went back after the whole divorce thing happened. I was kind of lost, right? So I went back to Switzerland and I just called up. That's kind of a funny story, actually, where I emailed the partner when I came back. His name's Brad, and I just sent him an email. I was like, "Hey, Brad, I'm back in Switzerland. You want to have lunch?" And he's like, "Sure." So we set up this lunch June 26, 2018. Set up the lunch first, and he invited two other partners, my old boss and another partner. And it's really hard to get three partners' schedule available at the same time. So I'm like, all right, I can't really move that if anything happens. And then about a week after that, the notice for my divorce date came, and it was the exact same day in the morning. And it was at 8 o'clock, and the lunch is at 12. So I go to court with my ex, and it's about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it was all done pretty quick. But we were in this, can imagine what state you're in. You're pretty down and kind of don't give a shit. So we started drinking beer at 10 in the morning. So by the time I met him at noon, I was pretty smashed, and they didn't know I was back. And they're like, "Oh, welcome back." I was like, "Yeah, I literally just got divorced 2 hours ago," and then just drinking. And it was I was really liberated with how honest I could be, and I didn't care anymore. I was in such a low point. And I just told him, "Hey, look, I'm here. I want to work for a few months, non-committal." And like, "Okay, yeah, sure. Here's a 3-month contract." And so I ended up only having that at first, but then once I got back into work and stuff and gave me something to do, I ended up going back full time. And then I quit again 2 years ago. No, 2021. And that was where I just said, because the first time I quit, I still had my apartment. I just subleased it. And I was still registered in Switzerland. But this time I was I just left everything, left the job, left the apartment, deregistered. So I'm not tied anymore.
And when you say we started drinking, you and your...
Me and my ex. Yeah. We just, after the divorce, we sat there. And that was the last time I saw her. It was over beers after the divorce court.
Wow, interesting.
What'd you guys talk about?
Nah, just usual shit, I guess people say after they get divorced. I don't know.
I don't know. Is there usual shit people say?
I have no idea. I think I looked at her and said, "You really fucked up," or something like that. No, we're just talking about like life and what she's gonna do. And she was in Portugal and had just started a job and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's kind of easy in a sense. We just did it and.
Yeah, you want to get it? Yeah, sure.
Huh?
I don't know. Just you sign some documents. You end up in court. They finalize your divorce, and then you're like, "Hey, you want to go get a drink?"
Yeah. And she cried the whole thing, and I was just like so dead emotionally. So it was me just being emotionally dead and her tearing throughout the whole proceeding. And then, and then we're just walking, and like I was like, I gotta kill some time. You wanna just go have some drinks? She said, yeah, sure.
I don't understand if she's crying so much. Like, doesn't it sound like she wants to tell you something?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Like, I can't let that go. I don't get it.
Like, she just felt bad for me. That's why she was crying.
Like a
or
sympathy.
guilty or something. I don't know.
Man.
Well, I mean, she was upset herself too. I don't know if she expected it to happen that fast either.
It sounds like something she did that maybe.
Well, she I don't know did, but I don't like she didn't do anything. It's not like she cheated on me or anything, but I think she just felt guilt over the way it happens and basically for lying to me for a long time about her emotions.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of guilt wrapped up in that.
I don't know. It just sounded when I drinks. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, it just whatever. I wouldn't say it was behind me at that point, but I was like, I mean, let's just drink and just talk more. It's fine.
Yeah. I get this girl drunk and take her home.
Yeah. That died pretty soon. Like it didn't take very long for me to be like, I want nothing to do with this person anymore, even though it's heartbroken.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well, at least you're able to to speak freely at your meeting with your future boss and your past boss.
Yeah, there's something, and the only reason I mention that is there's like a certain power to the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Like when you really don't care anymore. Like there's just something liberating about it.
Yep.
Yeah. People don't have power over you. And like the weird thing is,
no, because you're like nothing, you can't take anything anymore. Like you've already taken everything. There's nothing you can do.
Yep.
You know what's weird is like you always have that power. It's just that you take it away from yourself.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you can learn that until you have been fired or you've quit and you have it taken from you. And then you realize, so fucking what?
Well, it's understanding that you actually don't have anything.
Yes, that's well put. Can you maybe flesh that out a little bit more?
Well, everything is impermanence and change, right? There is no static. There is no thing that lasts forever. So to the extent that you lose something, it's the extent that you never had it anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you can actually have in terms of stuff outside of you.
It's a great point.
Everything's just loaned to you.
Yeah, it's just loaned to you. You're just borrowing it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It makes you like really kind of think about,
There's a different spin on the WEF, you own nothing and be happy thing. I don't think they mean it that way, right? I think when they say you'll own nothing and be happy, it's like we're going to take all your shit and you're going to be a slave. But the upside of that is actually there is a lot of liberation in not owning anything because you don't have to worry about it. Like if it breaks, it's not yours anyway.
Or how about you? Hey, my neighbor has a new car. How come I don't have one? That jealousy goes away.
Jealousy. Yeah.
You'll own nothing and be happy because we'll rent it all back to you.
Yeah.
And now we're back to labels. Like, so many people define themselves by the labels. Like, I'm a homeowner. I'm a this owner. Well, people are afraid that you're going to get those labels taken away from you. Right. And maybe that's what the WEF is talking about. It's like, look, we're going to change society so that it's better. The only problem is that when criminals make the rules, they don't ever make it better for you. They make it better for
No.
themselves. You know what I mean?
I
So
don't
I can
think they have that
understand.
intention. Yeah.
You don't think they have what intention?
I don't think they're intending what you're suggesting, like that they're doing it because they want to change and like have this hippy dippy, you know,
Right.
unencumbered lifestyle. No, they want to take it from everyone else and keep it. That's what I think.
Do you think the majority of people in positions of authority are psychopaths?
I think you have to be.
Hmm.
Who is a person that wakes up and goes, I think I should lead 350 million people? Right? What kind of ego do you need to be able to say that?
A huge ego. Me and Ben were
You have
talking
to
about.
be at least somewhat sociopathic, and that's the minimum.
Yeah. I read a book called The
So it's almost
Psychopath
like
Test.
anyone that wants to lead shouldn't lead.
It should disqualify you. The very fact that
It
you
should.
want to do it should disqualify you. Who
Yeah,
wants
you
to
should have
lead?
the, like,
Put your hand up. Okay, you
grudging
guys are all
leader.
over there. You guys are
Like
going to
in-
you
like
guys are
in-
going to the mansion with the homeless people.
Yeah, like in Gladiator, where the guy doesn't want to do it. Right? You need the guy that doesn't want to do it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's Marcus Aurelius. I think he had mentioned something like that in Meditations.
Yeah.
Like power should be given only to those who vehemently do not want it, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
You seem like you would. Would you like some power, George?
None. I've been nope. Get it away from me, dude. I want none of
Yeah.
it. I want none, dude. I remember I worked at a pizza place when I was like 15. They're like, we're gonna make you manager. I'm like, nope. I want no part of that, man. I was like, why not? You make $1 more. I'm like, oh, dude, who am I to tell these people what to do? Let them do whatever they want, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my shit over here. You know, and I've always looked down on myself because I've had a lot of opportunities where people are like, why don't you lead it there? And I'm like, no way. Like, why not? I'm like, that's a horrible. To this day, when the young kid, I always see the young guys that are going to managers, and I always pull them aside, and I'm like, dude, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? Like, I just met with this kid that went from making $75,000 a year to making 160. And I pulled him aside. His name's Sean. I'm like, Sean, dude, are you sure you want this job? And he's like, yeah, dude, I've been working real hard, and I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, dude, it's a trap, bro. You're being trapped right now. And I just gave him like this whole idea, at least in my mind. You know, I'm like, dude, you're a good person, but let me just tell you what I think can happen here. I'm like, do you look around? How many of these people here, like, do you really want the best for? And he's like, all of them. And I'm like, what about that guy yesterday that I saw in the office? It was calling you a big giant pussy. You want the best for him? And he's like, well, maybe not him. And I'm like, dude, that's gonna be everybody, man. They're all gonna come in there and they're all gonna tell you horrible things. Like, dude, what about when Bob's kid dies, man? You gonna go to his house? You ready for that? You know, like I don't think. I think this kid is actually going to be a pretty good leader. Sean's he's a really nice young man. I think he genuinely cares, and I think he's actually someone that could actually handle power. That being said, like I don't think that people who are promoted go through those kinds of classes. The same way, like you should go to a counselor before you get married, you should go to a counselor before you get promoted in any sort of hierarchy. Like you should have to go through these rituals, these real things of like, okay, now you're responsible for these other people. You know what that means? Yeah, you're going to get more money, but do you want to be responsible for these people? Like, what does it mean? What does it mean to be responsible for 400 people? Like, I don't think people think about that. And that's what power is. Like, you should be aware of that kind of stuff when it comes to power.
You should go see a counselor before you get married.
Yeah. You know how many people do that? I don't know. I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I'll bet you dimes to donuts that people who see a marriage counselor prior to getting married stay together more than people that don't. I bet you the divorce rates are higher among people who don't see a counselor versus people that do.
You're going to force people to do that, George?
No, it's completely voluntary. Like, I think you should do it, but I would neither force neither force nor coerce people. I wouldn't threaten them or force them to do it, but I think it's a good idea. I'm going to encourage my kid to do it.
Did you do it?
No, I didn't, but Brian Jellick did it. And I I always remember thinking like, what kind of a dummy goes to a counselor? But then the older I got, and then like I thought about the relationships that I was in, I was like, dude, that's probably a pretty good idea. You probably should sit down with someone and like have an adult ask you like, especially if you're like in your teens or something, like 19. Like there's a lot of questions someone who's been married. Like think about what kind of wisdom, Paul, if you sat down in front of a young couple, like you could offer them a lot of wisdom that they may not be thinking about that could help them in their future, right?
My girlfriend says that Catholics have to do this. She's
Yeah,
whispering to me.
he was Catholic.
Oh.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. I'm not married, George.
Oh, I think I had heard you say that before. But you kind of a common law marriage, right?
There's no common law marriage in the state of Hawaii.
Can I ask you why you're not married?
Because I don't believe in marriage.
What does that mean?
It means like
you don't believe in being together with someone forever, or you don't believe in like signing some paperwork?
Yeah, there needs to be a like paperwork and a ceremony and a piece of jewelry, in order for me to be dedicated to the person that I love. Like I don't like all that stuff is just like it's a waste of time and energy and resources.
Dude, that's the most egoistic,
horrible thing. That's why you like my book, man.
Like, dude, that's so fucked up for a woman dreams her whole life. Like my daughter dreams of being married one day. My daughter dreams of meeting a man that will promise her to him. And for some guy to be like, yeah, fuck, I don't believe any of that shit. Like that to me, I think that sucks, man.
Yeah. So then any woman that wouldn't like my view on that is free to go and be with somebody else.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm just giving you my point of view.
Yeah, no. But I just think that's kind of a crazy thing to say, George.
It's not though, man. Like if someone loves you and is like, I'm gonna be with you my entire life, like I think you should be willing to engage in like a ceremony. Maybe you don't need like if it's not that
ceremony, have a ceremony.
What's wrong with signing a piece of paper though? Like what's wrong
with that's the part where I would say I don't know if you need the paper, but you can have a ceremony.
Yeah. Right, yeah. But what's wrong with the paper?
Well, what's wrong without the paper?
Yeah, there you go.
Like what does the paper do for you?
If the woman that you love forever, if prior to getting married, if you say to this
person, the paper
like,
makes you love forever. Without the paper, you can't love.
No, hang on. No. The paper to me is it's a symbolic idea. But if the other person wants to have that, shouldn't you give it to them?
Yeah, if you think that's something you're willing to compromise on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why?
It's just everything is compromise, right? That's just one of the compromises you might make.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been with my partner for like 28 years, and they're just never, she's never asked me to sign a piece of paper. Hey, Paul, do you love me and want to be with me? Yes, I do. Then you got to sign this.
Do you think she wants that though? Does your wife want to be married? On a piece of paper?
I think she's fine either way. Like if we decided, hey, let's get married, then she would do that.
You think she's fine either way? You don't know?
Yeah, George, she's fine either way.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking for looking for the words.
Well, I mean, look, what do you think? She still says this, freaking standing in the corner, tapping her toes,
28 years.
Women hide a lot of stuff, man, and like
that's for sure. But they don't wait that long.
Yeah, read Kev's book.
Yeah. I don't like. I have a daughter, and I just think about like, I wouldn't want any woman to wait with a dream in their heart. Like I love this person so much, I'm not even gonna say anything. Like maybe sometimes men and women are afraid of their partner leaving, and like, what if they're afraid to be like, fuck, if I ask them that they might leave? Like, like it saddens me to think that a piece of paper would get in the way of you loving somebody. But I guess that works either way, right? Like if you need the piece of paper, you don't. It doesn't. Why would a piece of paper matter? I see what everybody's saying. Just my personal, and this doesn't have to be for anybody else's, but for anybody listening, like I think it's a small price to pay to be with someone you love forever. That's just my personal thing.
Look, if you're going to ask somebody, if you're fearful that if you ask somebody, what their position on marriage is, or you tell them that you want to get married and they leave, then they need to be with that
That's your
person.
answer.
Yeah, it's a shitty relationship anyway.
You
What
know?
about for legal purposes though? Like, who's gonna get all the stuff when you? What if you got hit by a bus? Boom, done. And then now, like, your family's like, well, you guys weren't married. I think I'll just take all the stuff.
I think there's an argument for some legal, things like if you're a multinational couple and you want to live somewhere and you
If you go to the
can't 'cause
hospital, you can't even go inside the hospital and see your spouse because you're not married.
Yeah.
I'm her husband. Let me see your paperwork. I don't have it. Well, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Well,
There's some arguments there for that.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't look. Maybe if they make marriage available to everybody, then then maybe I don't know. Maybe I might.
It's a protest then.
No, no. I'm saying that because I know they won't.
I know. That's why I said it's a protest.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, it's just like I've just never been interested in marriage. Like even weddings, right? I don't attend weddings. I have a lot of friends who've been married, and I think I've been to one wedding. Invited to a lot, but I think I've only been to one. And then it just kind of reaffirmed, like, this is ridiculous. Like, everybody here is suffering from on some level with anxiety, right? And so you're gonna go sit with a bunch of people and like go through some ritual and like, to me it's just, I don't know. I'd rather take that money and like, go travel or something.
How do you think other women look at other women that aren't married? Like, I see this as a problem. Like women who are with men and they haven't been married for that long. I think they go into groups with other women that are married, and the women that are married look down on that other woman. Like, oh, what? How come you're not married? Don't you ever like worry about that? Like, like I can see that in the groups in which, like, just groups in general. I think it's got to be very difficult for a woman who's not married to be around a group of other women who are successful and are married. They look at her like there's something wrong with her. And that's probably going to make her feel inadequate. Even if she believes wholeheartedly she doesn't have to be married, she's being looked down upon. She's being shunned in a way by other women. And that can't feel good.
I don't know if that's true, but I don't know. Maybe my wife goes out there and looks at all of her friends who are married and is like, stupid. Like, you got married?
Like, it's also like this weird, everyone wants you to join their club kind of thing too.
I can see that.
Yeah. Like, oh, you're not married? Why not? I'm married. You should go too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like George, he's always, the guy who's out there trying to test social norms, is an advocate for marriage. Crazy.
I forget who said there was a comedian that was talking about gay marriage. He's like, you're gay and you have this alternative lifestyle. You want to do the same boring shit that everyone else has done for hundreds of years. Why? Get creative. Find a new model.
I mean, look what happens when marriages fall apart. Right? It's like there's a lot of energy that goes into separating two people that are married. Like in most.
My friend is still going. I have a friend going through divorce. He's still doing it 2 years in. They're still in court.
It's like, hey, let's fight over everything, right?
Yeah.
And then let's entangle children into this mess in some cases.
That's the point of it, though. Like, you're supposed to be committed. Like that's what bonds you to it. Like, look, for better or worse, for life or death. Like, this is it.
Yep.
So if you don't have that piece of paper, you're kind of like, tell them.
Right, but even if you do have it, what's stopping you?
Are you kidding me?
And like, I'm an example of it changing like that. Like, we had the paper, so what? It was over 2 months later. I mean, it wasn't really much of an obstacle.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's like, that paper doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything to me.
That's right. That's why you don't have one.
No, what means something to me is like it's my level of commitment, right?
Right.
I'm committed. I
Right.
think, you know, like look at the scoreboard, 28 years, man. You know,
Yeah, you can be
good,
committed without marriage.
bad times, you know, like everything, you name it. Me and my wife have been through it. And here we are, right? Still. And I call her my wife. I don't know why. I
Because you
do.
love her. She's awesome. She loves you, man.
Yeah.
You guys are married. You just don't have a piece of paper.
Yeah, because we don't need the piece of
Yeah.
paper. You know, people are like, yeah, you need to get this piece of paper. You can frame it and hang it on your wall, right? It's like, no, I don't need that. And I definitely don't need to blow a bunch of money on invitations and catering and, you know, having some guy stand there and tell us like, okay, now you're married, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like, is there a fear that like, if you had that piece of paper, then you would get screwed?
No, but something I used to, so an argument I used to make is that because, you know, separating yourself, you know, because of that piece of paper, like, you know, breaking the marriage up is difficult. And so to me, I kind of always viewed it as a safety net for people. Like, I don't have to really try that hard because divorce is difficult. And so there's
Right.
always, you know, there's always time,
Mm.
you know, you know, reconciliation. And, and so, you know, I always kind of viewed it as that, right? Whereas like without all those legal mechanisms, which is the situation that I'm in, right? Like she can just leave and I can just leave. There's no common law marriage here in the state of Hawaii. I could be gone and it's done. Right. So to me, it's like there is no safety net. There's no like, oh, well, we're going to, you know, have a trial separation because maybe I really don't feel like dumping a bunch of money on divorce. Or I know the process is going to be long and drawn out and maybe there's time to make amends. You know, so during the marriage, I really don't got to put a whole lot of effort into it. No, man.
So does that
We don't
safety
have
net keep you in? Like, I mean, when you say, like, that's a weird way to
I
say it, like a
I
safety
think,
net. Like, it sounds like
yeah,
there's no commitment. Like another way
I
to
think
say that is, well, we're not really committed to it.
I think a lot of people who get married aren't really committed to it.
Agreed. Agreed.
And so, right, but what? Maybe they're afraid of being alone or,
Maybe.
they, they're limited on the people that they've met and so, they're settling, right, for this other person.
I'm
And
sure.
and they stay together and the divorce is a big thing, right? It's like if you
Yes.
start talking about divorce, then what is the first thing that happens, man? Everybody starts talking you out of it, right? And
I don't
so,
know.
well, I mean, it's been my experience with people that I know, right? Oh, like we're gonna get a divorce. Oh, why are you doing that? You guys seem so happy together. Have you really thought this through? La la la. You know what I mean? Like you know, and except for in cases where there's like abuse or infidelity, right?
Mm.
But in most other cases, like people are like, oh, have you really thought about it? Maybe you should give it another chance. And so I think that marriage, in a legal standpoint, is a safety net. You know, it because eventually you're going to air your grievances to somebody, to your partner, to an attorney. If you want to go get counseling, to a counselor. But somebody's going to make you talk, and then so when that happens, there's always an opportunity to make things right again and save the marriage. But when that paper is not there, you can just go and that's end of story. There is no safety net.
Kev, what do you think? Like your girl, in your book, you're pretty candid about, what happens. Would you ever get married again?
I'm not inclined to do it. We have discussions all the time because she's very much pro getting married, and
I'm with
I'm
her.
like, yeah, she's on your team, I'm on Paul's team, because like it's everything we just talked about. We're like,
Right.
oh yeah, you're really committed, and then actually no, the paper can be absolved in a very short period of time and rather painlessly. Like it really is just a couple of forms to fill out and a court date, and it wasn't even that expensive. And you're like, all right, well, if that's the only deterrent to this thing, that's not really a strong deterrent. other than I'm afraid to get screwed financially, so I'm going to stay in the relationship. And that to me doesn't feel romantic at all. Like I'm just in this because I don't want to get screwed over. And if I leave, I'm going to take my money. Or vice versa.
You see, okay, I'm glad you brought up romance into it. Think about a young girl who her entire life has seen fucking movies about Cinderella, who has talked to her little girlfriends from the age of 6 about what a marriage might look like, who has fantasized for 18 or 20 years about getting to have some bridesmaids and learning about something borrowed, something blue, something old, something new, about her family coming together, all the women in her family coming to her and fucking celebrating with her. Look, you did it, love. Congratulations. Now you're going to start this new part of your life. Like, to take away that, to take that away from a little girl who has found someone in you that she loves and wants to be with forever. To take away that is like the most unromantic thing possible. Like when you do that, it seems to me like the pussy gets instantly dry. Like that's like the wrong thing to do. Like, you should be the prince. You should be the man that the woman wants to marry. Fucking give her the kingdom. Be the prince. Fucking have the fucking horses there. Baby, I'm the one. You fucking did it. Congratulations. I don't know how you did it, but you got me. I'm the fucking
She's eating this shit up, George. She's going like she's
well, I'm telling you all day long. Like I have a daughter. Like I see the programming and like, what's wrong with that, man?
But
like,
that's what it is. Thank you for using the word. The answer is you'd say the same thing you would say to anybody trying to overcome their social programming. Why do you think that? Why do you dream that? Since when? Where did it come from? Do you think that's just because everyone else around you is doing it? Do you think it's just because of the movies you watched when you were a kid? Is that an original thought, or was it programmed into you?
No, this is something that's deeper than that. Like, this is something that has been in. Marriage is in every society, in every country in the world, and it's a union,
but
between
not
man and woman.
Marriage necessarily.
Not all of them,
all
but
kinds of marriage. There's all kinds of unions and partnerships.
There is, but I think, and like, I don't know around
marriage
the world.
Wasn't about love till recently, anyways, right? I write about the book a little bit. It was about just like an economic household.
Arranged marriages, right?
Yeah, I think it's a quote in my book even where it's like they used to think that getting married for love was insane.
Stupid.
They're like, why would you put something as important in marriage as something as fickle as love that can change on any whim?
Yeah.
So it's a very new concept, actually. In the last only like 200 or 300 years have people done that.
I mean, aren't these conversations that you should be having with your significant other, like when real feelings start to develop?
Well, hey, I've had them. Like, I don't know if everyone has them, but yeah, we've had the conversation.
Right. So then, if you're having those conversations, then like what you said, George, you're not robbing anybody of anything.
I don't know. I mean, I would like to believe you're not, but if we look at how many people get divorced, if we look at how many relationships, like, I know some people, you know what? Like, if I'm honest with myself and I look at the relationships in my family, I don't really envy any of them. I don't. I think that me and my wife have the best relationship out of anybody I know. And like, I'm being dead honest here. And me and my wife eloped. We didn't have a big ceremony or anything like that, but we had a minister, and then you go down and you sign it, but like, that's ours. Like, the wedding day, like, that's something that I will cherish for my entire life. Like, for me, it's something that lives forever and it never dies. Like, I can look back. I know the clothes I was wearing. I can tell my kids about it. Hey, Dad, where were you when you got married? What did you wear? And it's more than just words. It's more than a piece of paper. It's a signification. It's a symbol of your individual life dying and you and this other person being bonded together forever. Your individual lives are over. That's what marriage is. Marriage isn't a continuation and having a safety net and you can leave whenever you want and this is weak. Marriage is two people coming together forever, and that's it. Done. Forget about it. shit happens and maybe it cracks, but that should be the foundation of marriage, is two people saying goodbye to their former selves, two people saying, look, we're done. I've found my soul's counterpoint in the other. We're one now. And from here on forward, we're going to act as one. It's fucking hard to do, but that should be the purpose of marriage. And it seems to me that in a society that would be amazing is if two people could come together as one and then raise their kids that way. I think that would make for a better society. What do you think?
I think it's a compelling argument, but again, like, I don't need marriage or a piece of paper or a ring, to to adhere to those same.
Okay. Let me ask you this.
Yeah,
Isn't there
you can
something-
have all of that. You can have a ceremony, like,
right? You have a ceremony. Okay.
You declare it in front of everybody. You do.
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my next thing. Like,
isn't other than the fact that it's an extremely egocentric thing to do. I did it, so I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love my wedding was awesome. It was fucking great. It was.
Did you have
But it is an incredibly egocentric thing when you think about it from a high level. It's like, I'm going to make everyone fly here and so they can hear me go, oh, baby, I love you. Oh, baby, I love you. And then leave. And then a few years later, oh, I'm divorced now. Sorry, my bad. Let me do it again. Come back.
Well, it should be a huge thing.
I'm right this time. I swear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I came from my parents got divorced, and then my dad got remarried like 4 or 5 more times. My mom got remarried 1 more time. And so maybe I think that that's maybe something that made me not want to get divorced. I don't know. Like,
I think you're just lucky,
know.
man. Like,
I do. I agree.
Pick the good one.
I agree.
And yeah,
I agree.
Not everyone's lucky in that shit, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. I wish everybody could be, but
me too.
That'd be illogical.
I wish I was like less jaded about it, but now I'm like, I don't know, because I used to not be,
Right. I guess ignorance is bliss in this particular situation.
It's just whatever happens to you, right? Well, you're lucky enough that it's still going strong, and hopefully it stays that way, right?
Yeah.
And then the story makes sense for you.
But I think it's a little bit more than luck, right? Like, you have to work at it.
Yeah, no. I think there's definitely work, but I think even with the work, there's luck involved, because it's not like I didn't work in my marriage; it just wasn't the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes 2.
For her, anyways.
For her.
Actually, it takes 2, but it takes 1 too, right? If one person's like her, I don't want this anymore. All right, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's broken.
This is true.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't need to be married.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
I don't knock anybody for doing it, but yeah.
I agree.
Personal.
Would you be opposed to having a civil union, Paul?
No,
you should have an
I'd be all
earthy peyote ceremony wedding.
Yeah, I'm down for a civil union. Is there a piece of paper I can sign for that?
But it doesn't come with all the same rights. It's not quite a marriage certificate. What if we had like a second? Maybe you could have a different kind of.
Yeah, you could have a peyote wedding or something along those lines. Or
we should create a new one.
You do it. You do it in front of the all and nature, and you make your vow to the infinite, but there's no legal shit involved.
Yeah, I mean, that actually sounds kind of cool.
I'd be down for that, because that's a real commitment. That's like you're literally committing to fucking the universe.
Well, there you go.
Not some institution, not some jurisdiction, not some set of laws.
Right. So you bring your girlfriend to Hawaii. I'll get my,
Okay. I don't think she'll do peyote though.
And
it's pretty old school. Yeah.
And then I was gonna say, then we'll do like a double wedding, right? A double ceremonial universe.
Nice.
If you do peyote, that might be the kicker.
Yeah, there you go. See,
She's like,
it's
you
not,
commit to me that way? I was like, well, maybe if you try peyote, that's like a
yeah.
huge step for you. So
See what's going down, George? This is how it works, right? It's a negotiation, right?
I'm with you,
yeah,
man.
everything's a compromise. We're just talking
Right.
it out.
I'm happy to be part of it, man. I'm like the marriage counselor before the wedding.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I would definitely need to have some. We could have some counseling before the ceremony so I can make it through it.
Yeah, we need the counseling. You get those
Well,
homeless guys playing the drums, and they can talk it through.
We'll go
We're
down
gonna-
to, and and there's a bunch of like self-ordained ministers down there, and they'd be happy to
I mean,
marry.
anyone can do it in like 5 minutes online.
Yeah.
I actually used to do that as a. Did I tell you guys the story? I was a fake priest for a while in Japan.
I read that in your book, but what's the story on that?
It was so. I was there for about a year. I was doing the teaching thing, and some guy kept trying to pawn off a Saturday language course on me, and I didn't want to do that. I said I already teach Monday to Friday. I don't want to teach on Saturdays. It was some extracurricular private course, so I said no for a long time. And then he was about to leave Japan, and then he told me what it really was. So it wasn't actually an English course. It was him putting on priest's robes and officiating Japanese people being married in Japanese. And I was like, well, that's just too bizarre not to try. So I was all about it. So I took it over from him. And it was this weird expat word of mouth gig that just kept getting passed down to every generation of expats that would join this program. And it was the way I describe it to people. It's like if you can imagine white yuppie California people that want to have a traditional Buddhist wedding, and for the Buddhist monk, they just find some random Asian dude and throw orange robes on him. That it's like the exact opposite of that, right? So there are Japanese people that did a Western style ceremony, and they're like, "Oh, here's a white guy. Like, let's just put him at there, and he'll say some stuff, and then they'll kiss, and then it's over." So I did that for like a year, probably like two to six of them a month, and I had like my little black book with the gray tassel page holder, and I learned that part of it was in Japanese, so I would do the intro thing in Japanese, and then there was a part about Corinthians. I forget the exact page number. It was like, when I was a child, I talked like a child, and then I became a man, and I left childish things behind me. There was that part, if you know it. I had that memorized at a certain point in time, not anymore. And then I do the thing, and then take them to sign the paper, and then you may kiss or whatever. And it was about 20 minutes, and that was it. So,
that's so awesome.
It was scary at first, but then it became fun.
Yeah, George. So right there, the absurdities of marriage.
Yeah, and it was actually really interesting. You could kind of tell who was actually in love and who maybe didn't know each other too well. Like you could kind of get the vibe of the bride and groom.
Yeah, you go to Vegas. I mean, Vegas has some drive-through weddings. It can be absurd. I mean, I'm not saying that all weddings. I think our friend Benjamin wrote a book called No Absolutes, so I would never use absolutist terms. Not all of anything, but a lot of weddings are one-night stands, or there's a lot of crazy weddings. But I think on a traditional level, for me, I'm really lucky. Like I think there's something to be said about having a piece of paper, having a commitment to somebody, and giving that other person what they want. Like if my wife wants to be married, and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, you want to be married? Let's do it. For me, that wasn't scary. For me, that wasn't something that was a no-go. For me, that wasn't something I should be afraid of. For me, that wasn't a deal breaker. And so, while some weddings can be silly and have Elvis represent them, like, we just had a local Hawaiian lady come down, and she just read a few words, and we drew our names in the sand, and and we have a little memento that it was just me and my wife, and we had her friend came because we needed a witness. So it was like, I think that here's another way too. Here's a different kind of wedding. So
Hey,
after
George,
we yeah,
real quick. How
yeah,
long you been
please.
married? How long you been married?
15 years.
15 years?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. And so after we had our ceremony, then we went back to my wife's house. My wife is Laotian, and like she didn't tell me we were gonna have a ceremony. So we get there, and like her dad's like, "Hey, come upstairs," and he gives me this suit to put on. I'm like, "What? It's kind of hot in the house, man. I don't think I need to wear a suit, man. What is this?" And he's like, "No, just put it on." And I'm like, "Why? What for?" And then like there's a huge party going on at the house, and like my wife finally comes in and she goes, "Oh, I didn't tell you, but we're gonna have this wedding ceremony." What the fuck are you talking about? Why didn't you tell me that earlier? But then my wife put on like this traditional gown, and we sat in like the living room, and everyone came over, and then like everyone said all these prayers around us, and they tied on like these little strings on our arms. Like I must have had 500 different little strings on my wrist, and they tied them on. The guests would come over and they would say like a little prayer and tie a little thing on my wrist and one on my wife's wrist, but they were all prayers and wishes from those people, like what our life would be like and like good gracious and stuff. So the ceremony was beautiful, and that's what, when you said you can have a ceremony, like that's what I think about when you were saying that. Like I think there's something to the ceremony. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I kind of wish, looking back, that my parents could have been at my wedding. I think that my mom would love to have seen her little boy get married. I think my wife's dad would have liked to walk her down the aisle. And I think that there's, in those ceremonies, the wedding is not just for the bride and groom, but it's for the families. As egotistical as it is, like the families play a big role in that, in different traditions and stuff. And I want my daughter to, I would love to be at my daughter's wedding. If she wants to run away and elope, so be it. But I would like to be there.
Yeah, men giving away women. That's a great ceremony.
Well, I mean, if you look at it like that, it sounds horrible. But you know what? If you look at like, yeah, it doesn't have to be. Maybe that's for you. Maybe that's how it would be. But it wouldn't be that way for me. It would be me
I don't get
with my.
involved.
Yeah, well, I hear you. I want to be as involved as I can, man. Like I want the man that my daughter marries. I want to know. I want to know more than fucking anybody in the world. Like that's a different version of me. I think that the first man a woman falls in love with is her dad. And so like that's my fucking job. But I want to know all that. I want to be involved in as much as I possibly can. And I don't want to give her away. But if I have to, I want to fucking be there when it happens.
Well, I mean, it's the whole idea of like giving this woman away, right?
It's my daughter. No one's like, you have to take her from me. But yeah, there should be a ceremony for that. Like that's a horrible thing to have your daughter. Like that's a horrible thing to give her away. And no,
You used to get paid for it, right? In the old days.
What's that? Yeah, I got to pay for it. You're right. Right.
Didn't you know? I think in the old days, didn't you used to get paid? Wasn't there like didn't they have to pay the bride price or something?
Yeah, the father pays a dowry. And those are back to the arranged marriages, right?
Yeah.
Well, now the father, pays for the wedding.
Yeah, like we've kept some of that intact.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is kind of sick, twisted, but people want to participate in it, then, and I'm not, I was joking when I said that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it comes down to seeing it how you want to. Like if you want to see it as sick and twisted, I think it speaks volumes of the way you look at maybe some relationships. Like it shouldn't be sick and twisted. It should be beautiful.
Yeah, but again, it's like look at look where these traditions are rooted in, right? Like I keep talking about like like this man is giving his daughter away to another man. Like you don't see any issue in that.
Well,
my ex-father-in-law didn't pay for our wedding. Damn it. I got screwed on that one.
Yeah, not really. Like, I mean, hopefully your daughter's marrying someone she wants to marry.
Yeah,
And
but
you know,
still, the groom doesn't get, isn't given away.
no, a daughter's a daughter for all of her life. A son is a son until he finds a son is a son until he finds a wife. A daughter's a daughter for all of her life. Like your daughter, I mean, I think that yeah, you have to give your are you giving her away or are you giving your blessing? Depending on how you translate terms of traditional ceremonies, it can mean a lot of things. But if you interpret it as like I'm giving her away, like she's a piece of me, I still think that that's still kind of beautiful in a way. Like she's a piece of you, man. Like you're giving up part of you so that she can become her own part in her own family. Like you're giving that away. Like that's sacrifice, man. That's fucking. It's. I guess if you're looking at it from like a misogynist point of view, like men own women, but like it doesn't have to be looked at that way. And I think it's oversimplifies it, man. Like you
Well,
can see it that way.
and though it's rooted in that very thing, and the blessing part is the groom to be asking the father's
Mhm.
permission to marry this girl.
Yes. That's a beautiful thing too.
Oh, that's why I didn't pay for it. I never did that.
Yeah, you're supposed to do that, right?
But yeah, I mean, but like, whatever you think marriage is now, but that's what it's rooted in, right?
But it's what you believe. It's not what it's rooted in. It's what you and the person you're marrying believe it is, right? Fuck everybody else. It's like it's what you got. It's your marriage.
So what's so different about that and believing like we don't need the ceremony or the piece of paper to know that we are dedicated, committed, and and care for each other deeply?
Well, I'm not.
Like if you can go ahead and say, like if you're okay to shape it, then I'm okay to define it.
Yeah, look, I don't see a problem with it. Like I'm just giving you my opinion of why I think for me it's the right thing and why I think not having it is weak. This is just my opinions of it. And so if you ask me what was wrong with that, if the question is what is wrong with not having it, I think that it allows I see the opposite of your arguments in that like it allows for an easy out. There is no net. Like yeah, you just fucking walk away. What kind of a commit? That's not a commitment then. Like that, you're not committed then. Like if you are committed, then the paper cannot mean anything in a good way or not mean anything in a bad way. So if it doesn't mean anything, I'll fucking sign it because my word is my bond. Here, I'll sign it right here. Take it. If the paper means something to you, I'll sign it. But like if it just seems there's a level of fear on it for signing it, and that's just my opinion, I guess. But I forgot where I was going with this.
No, I mean, there's no level of fear for signing it. It's a ceremony that I don't believe in, right? It's an act I don't,
right,
that I don't believe in, and neither does my significant other.
Right.
We don't see any value in that.
Yeah. Then that's fine.
And so my commitment to her and her commitment to me is, it's substantial,
Absolutely.
And again, like I don't think that signing a piece of paper would make it any stronger. And I don't think that, getting in front of a bunch of people and professing my love for this person, would make it any better either.
Wait, don't you think your wife would love that? Don't you think your wife wants you to stand in front of a crowd of people and be like, I love this woman more than anything on the planet? Like, I think that that's something that you should do. But don't you think she wants you to do that?
No, I don't think she wants me to do that.
All right. Like, I think that's a romantic thing to do. Call me old-fashioned, but I mean, you know what I mean? I think that you should do that. I think you should give that woman the goddamn fantasy more than she's ever even imagined.
George.
But
I am. Call me old-fashioned, right? Goddamn man. Jesus Christ. All masculine and shit.
white male, cisgender male,
Yeah,
and your
totally, dude.
traditions.
Yeah, right. We're gonna be the death of everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
you're a dinosaur. Man.
that
Oh, hang on. I just want to put up this quote. We have an amazing. Look here's one. Give her the wedding.
Give her the wedding. What a surprise!
Thank you,
a woman's
Raquel.
opinion.
Well, maybe it's just who better to speak on it, right? Then she's voicing the women. So it seems like all the women.
As Osho said, an ideal world would have every woman being married and every man being unmarried.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Impossible.
You know what? One thing I've learned, like, about love being older is that it seems. I remember I once had a friend tell me, my friend Ed, who was anti-marriage. We were talking about love, and he's like, the problem with love, George, is one person is always more in love than the other person. That's the problem. And I was like, fuck. I started thinking about relationships I was in, and then I started thinking about friends that I know, and I thought about his relationship, and I'm like, my answer to that is yes, but that switches back and forth. I think if you're together with somebody long enough, you go through periods where you love that person more, and then that person loves you more. But that oscillation of love between you, it's a fucking beautiful and scary thing to see, because there are times in a relationship where you're like, this person loves me more, and it, and you might take advantage of it. And it trips you out to start thinking about that. I think that is when men go through this part of the relationship, that's when they find themselves in trouble. It's when they find themselves wanting to cheat. But if you wait around a little bit, that shit comes back. And now all of a sudden you start seeing all the things that your wife or your woman did for you. And you're like, oh my God, I'm a total piece of shit. I fucking love this one. Why is she still with me? And then all of a sudden you can see now it's her turn. And it's like this. It's like a magnet. Like the force just goes from north and south and around and around. And I think once you get to a point in a relationship where you can see that love moving between you like that, oscillating, they're more in love, I'm more in love. They're more in love, I'm in. Pretty soon you understand this cycle. Pretty soon you begin to understand what love is. But I don't think you can get there until you have been in a relationship with someone for, a long time. And it's a different, even though that similar type of love may be in relationships with family members, I think it's different when it's someone that you're having sex with, or it's someone that you're romantically and physically, or connected by children with. But it's an interesting thing that I learned about love. I just wanted to share that with you guys. What do you guys think about that?
What's even more romantic than that, George?
A night in Vegas?
A signed document.
Well, they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know what that has to do with like getting married, but
yeah. I think I've noticed it because I am married, and I don't know if I would have noticed that unless I was in a long-term relationship, not necessarily married, but for me it was because I was married. But I think you could see that same pattern in a long-term relationship, regardless.
Well, I mean, there's a level of commitment there, right?
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, like my relationship, it's there's been times when I've, been head over heels in love with this woman.
Yeah.
There's been times when I've been like, the fuck out of my life. Right. And I'm sure that, I'm sure the same thing has been, it's been true for her. In fact, I know it's been true. Right.
Sure.
And so, but we've always stayed together. We've always found a way to communicate. And, the good times way outweighed the bad times. And, so if there's something worth, if it's worth it, then you stick with it. If it's not, then, go do something else.
But what happens
at the end of the day, it's all choice. But it's all choice either way you slice it, right? You keep choosing to be with the person. The choice is maybe harder to make if you have other obstacles in the way, like the threat of divorce or whatever. But in the end of the day, it's still the same. You can get divorced. Like people do it all the time. So there's still a choice there.
Yeah, I agree.
What if there was no fault? What if we took away the option of no fault divorce?
Well, then you live in the state of Hawaii, George. That's
So what
pretty
are the valid reasons for divorce then?
I'm sorry, but I heard both people at the same time.
Oh,
Okay.
I said what is, if you don't have no fault divorce, then what are the valid reasons, I guess, that you could get divorced? I don't know. I'm genuinely asking.
That's a good question. I think that infidelity,
Only
think
physical
abuse.
or emotional infidelity too?
I think much like 16 candles, you have to hold up the panties.
But what if you don't actually do anything physical, but you're, sharing this connection with somebody that's deep
Yeah, I hear
in a
you. That
friendship,
it's
but you don't act on it? Is that infidelity?
I think it would have to be physical. I think that a deep emotional connection, while very powerful, is
It
not
gets
as
a
much.
little hairy when we get the state and stuff and laws in there dictating what should happen.
Yeah, I agree. I hear you. I think the reasoning behind the no fault divorce is to make it, and I don't know if it does, but I think I'm just saying the reason behind that no fault divorce is to make it incredibly difficult to not get divorced. And that would make a piece of paper become even more scary. If once you got in it, it'd be very, very difficult to get out of it. But I think the reasoning behind that is to say, like, dude, this is a serious thing. You should really think about this before you get involved in this, because you can't get out once you get in. That may make less people get married. It may make marriage a more serious thing. It may make more people stay in abusive relationships. I don't know, but I was just curious to what you guys thought about that as an option.
I mean, it sounds like it makes that paper more like tenure.
Like, how so?
Well, like you're talking about the difficulties of getting divorced. When you get tenured, it's very difficult to get fired, right? So
Yeah.
that's a problem where now people can behave poorly or perform poorly at their jobs and still keep their jobs, which has been my argument about the whole divorce thing with this signed piece of paper, right? Is that once you have it, then it makes it difficult to get
I
out of
got
it.
kicked off.
Oh,
No worries. So the piece of paper, George, is like tenure.
well, there's a lot of ways to look at it, man. I don't know that the piece of paper would change your relationship in a matter of years. You know what I mean? Like I think the people that get tenure are looking forward to that, making that 10th year so that they can not have something being held over their head. But I don't see how the same thing flows that way.
Well, you were saying, that when you have this signed document and it becomes
Right.
very difficult, like it's discourages people from pursuing divorce, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Difficult process. And so what I'm saying is that same piece of paper can act like tenure, right? In that once you obtain it, right, then it's very hard for you to get fired from your job
Mhm.
if you perform poorly.
I
And
see.
so, maybe people are like, okay, I have this document, so I can perform poorly in this relationship because it's a hard thing to break up.
Yeah.
I bet that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah. I see what you're saying now. Yeah. That there's a lot of truth in that. Like, hey, we're in this together. You can't leave, so I could do whatever I want.
Right. And I mean, there are some countries where like divorce is not allowed, right? So, you know, people live lives with other people that they despise,
Mm.
you know, because they're stuck. And then like, you know, at least in some of these places where, you know, there's rampant amount of infidelity, at least on the man's side, right?
Right.
And here's this woman stuck in this relationship that she's never going to get out of, and that's a problem. And so that's, you know, when we started talking about this, you know, my thought was, you know, apply that to, you know, this piece of paper that's holding people together and allowing them to behave poorly because they know that the piece of paper holds them together. Whereas in my situation, there is no piece of paper, so I can't behave poorly.
Well, it sounds like you got it figured out, man.
I do,
But
man. Anything else?
yeah, I got one for you. Could you continue to be with a woman that has been unfaithful to you?
Do this again.
Are you asking me?
I think
What?
back, I'm not
This
sure.
is-
It's been super
Yeah, this one sounds better. And you came back in perfect timing because we got a question from one of our listeners here. And she says, can you continue to be with a woman that has been unfaithful to you? So I guess for me, I don't think I could. I would always wonder as soon as someone cheats on you, they're gonna cheat on you again, man. They cheat on you once, they're definitely gonna cheat on you again. You shouldn't be in that relationship. And even if you are, the bond is broken. Like you've broken that trust, and that person will never trust you again. You may, even if you don't cheat on them again, maybe you made one mistake and you won't cheat on them again, but that person will never fully trust you again. So
Yeah.
yeah, right. I think
It's
that
like it's like that scene from that movie I forget where the guy says, you know, Fidelity Savings and Loan is a tough creditor. You start deposits in another bank and they close your account.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. Like, you know, that's a deal breaker because you know, then it's like the trust, right?
fingers crossed.
That's a big, you know, you've eroded almost, you know, pretty much all trust, and that's hard to build back.
Yeah.
You know, because in the back of your mind, it's always going to be there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, no matter how much you want to say, like, no, I'm cool. You know what I mean? Like, we've worked through it or whatever. And then the thing is like, it's like, I know there's a statistic out there that points to like people who cheat are most likely to do it again.
Yeah. What about you, Kev? Can you continue to be with a woman that has been unfaithful to you? I think that's a no. Yeah. Yeah, I think that
I think that's
Oh man.
yeah. What about you, George?
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't. I couldn't. And that's the same reason I couldn't never cheat on anybody. Is like for me, I signed a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, I made a commitment to myself, my wife, and the relationship. And someone breaks that commitment, then it's over. You would never trust them again. It's interesting when, I mean, shit, I think everybody knows people who have cheated on their significant other, and they have kids and they want to stay together for the kids. And, I don't know what the right thing to do is in that particular scenario, but I know the relationship's never the same again. And then people start getting mad. How that was one time. How come you still hold that over my head? And, but it's over at that point in time. It's probably been over for a long time. It's probably been over if that person, it's probably been over for a long time if that person cheats on you, right?
Yeah. You know, I mean, you're probably missing the signs along the way.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, but still, right? It's like, people who sign that piece of paper generally
Yeah.
aren't looking for the signs because they got that piece of paper, right?
Well,
It's those of us who didn't sign the piece of paper
yeah.
that that are looking for the signs, right?
Some people might say that that piece of paper gives you the license to cheat. It's like a license to cheat.
Well, that's
You know
what
what I mean?
I
It's
mean.
like
You're making,
tenure.
yeah. It's like, yeah, and I'm just saying it's not true in all cases, but I'm sure
I
it's
know.
true in some cases where,
I
it is
agree.
a net that allows people to behave poorly in a relationship, right?
Hmm.
Especially like, there's some cultural things that are involved in marriage, right? Where it's like, yeah, I'm married, right? And usually, like, marriages, and I don't know a lot about marriage, but in the ones that I've seen, and the stuff that I've witnessed, marriage is very it's male dominated, right? Where it's almost like the man is gaining all this stuff, and freedoms and liberties, and and it seems like the woman gives up so much.
Okay, I'm hearing this. I keep hearing this pattern in what you're saying about marriage. Like number one, you're like, I don't like the fact that the man gives away a woman, and then you say things like, yeah, in some cultures, like the man's getting everything. Like it seems to me like you have a pretty negative view about men in marriage.
No, I mean, look at history. Like, just go back to the early, examples of marriage. Yeah, it was all about the man. In
I know,
some,
but why do you keep bringing that up? Like, are you like, why does that bother you so much?
well, because I don't think a marriage is an institution that needs to be honored.
So you're finding ways to make it look less honorable,
I don't think I need to find ways, George. I think they're there.
right? But specifically about men, though.
Right, because marriage doesn't seem to be, like, at least in the ceremonial part of it, an equal practice.
I think maybe I think maybe you're afraid of, and I don't mean this in a mean spirited way, but I think maybe you're afraid of of what men can do to women, and like that's coming through in your personality, and when you speak about look how men treat women, like it seems like there's more there to me. You know what I mean? Like just the examples you gave about, like I think that has something to do with marriage, man. Like how could it not? You know what I mean? Like I see that in the language that you're using. But I don't think it has to be. Like you're a fucking tremendous man. You love your wife. Like you are fucking I look up to you in a lot of ways. I think that you would be a great husband in a marriage. So I wonder if like you could see marriage in a way where the man was a great husband and a great man and he had a great wife, like even though like could you see relationships where that is there, and does that make sense?
Well, I mean, I think that I see that in a lot of marriages that I'm witnessing,
Agreed.
right? That there are great husbands and great
Yes.
fathers, great wives
Yes.
and mothers, right?
Yes.
But to me, it's this practice, ceremonial practice, right? That is a little bit demeaning to women, regardless of whatever, you know, um, whatever cultural. What did Kevin call it? Cultural. Shoot, I can't remember. But whatever, whatever traditions that women, have played out in their minds about being married and getting married.
But not in our society. Like weddings aren't demeaning for women in our societies though, right?
I mean, the husband, here's the wife's father giving her away.
Well, if that was true, why would so many women want to get married if it was demeaning for them?
Well, I mean, it's like this symbolic act, right? That you are being given to another man.
That's your interpretation of the act.
No, that's exactly what's happening.
Well, I think if you ask a woman like how she feels about it, I don't think she would have the same feeling that you do as it being like this demeaning thing.
I have no idea. I can't speak for women.
Well, you don't have to speak for them. All you have to do is look at how many women want to get married and want to have their father walk them down the aisle. Like they wouldn't want to be demeaned in front of their closest people that love them. Like they wouldn't want to be demeaned that way. And I can understand how it may depend on cultures, but we're just talking about our society. And if it was demeaning, the women are not masochists where they want to be just demeaned in front of the people they love the most. They want to be married. They want, not all of them, but a lot of women want to have a ceremony. They want to have this transition where their father walks them down the aisle one last time and then they start their new life. But like can you see it? Like it doesn't have to be demeaning, does it?
How come the groom's mother doesn't walk the groom down and give him away?
Because in the society, men have roles and women have roles.
Yeah.
And how come the woman doesn't go out and fight and the man stay home and cook?
Okay, I don't know where you're going with that, but I'm talking about men, right?
Yeah, men have roles. Like that's the ceremony.
Right. It's a ceremonial thing that's rooted in all kinds of weirdness.
But it doesn't have to be like you specifically describing demeaning to it, I think is inaccurate because it's your opinion of what it is. And the fact that so many women do it, I'm arguing that women do not want to be in a giant ceremony where everyone looks at them in a negative way. They want the opposite of that. And what you're saying is a man walking down his wife or his daughter, walking his daughter down is demeaning to that woman. It sounds like it's demeaning to you. But that's not the overall perspective that everybody's seeing.
No, and I'm not saying that it's the overall perspective that everybody's saying. But I think, men
you
and
think it's demeaning.
Yeah, I just think it's
okay.
It's symbolic of a time when, women didn't have any say in who they married, or very little say in who they married. And there was a husband, or a father, for money in many cases, gave his daughter to another man. And to make everybody feel good, they threw a party.
Yeah, I could see a lot of I could see a lot of heartache in a situation like that. I agree. I don't know anybody that's been in an arranged marriage, but I could see how it would be very difficult. I'm glad I don't know anybody in that situation. I wouldn't want to give my daughter to someone strictly for money. But I bet if you asked the father of someone who is giving their daughter in an arranged marriage, I bet you he wouldn't say that what he's doing is strictly giving his daughter to this person for money. I bet you he would say something that like, this is culturally appropriate and it's honoring our daughter. It's honoring our families. It's honoring something that these kids don't know enough to make a decision in. They don't understand what love is, but we as their parents understand what's best for them. And so, it's difficult for us in our culture to lay blame or try to interpret what's right in another culture.
I'm not pointing to another culture when I talk about these things. I'm talking about like American culture.
Right. So then I guess I'm confused because it seemed to me that a lot of the arguments you were pointing out were from different cultures, like arranged marriages and from
Those occurred in America.
Yeah, they probably still do today. But
Yeah,
I don't think but I don't know of any. So when I talk about our society, I guess when I'm talking about my culture, I'm talking about the people that I have known and I grow up with and my family. So
You
I
know,
don't
in
know
the
of any.
1600s, the 1800s, early 1900s, there was a lot of arranged marriages in America. You know, that were, you know, Christian and Catholic,
Right?
right? So that's what I'm referring to. And I'm also referring to, yeah, you know, there's some of these things are still practiced, you know, like they're dominant in other cultures around the world today, for sure. But
Here,
these are
yeah.
all things that occurred here in America, you
Here's
know, that
a
I'm talking
yeah.
about. And so, like, when, you know, to me, it's like it's still the same symbology, right? It's the act. This is what we're doing, right? Now, maybe people aren't thinking about it when they're, you know, like, oh, it would just be cool to do this, you know, and this is what I've always seen, like, you know, the father giving away his daughter,
Okay.
and some women actually are like, yeah, hey, I'm into that. But I don't know how many of those people are actually stopping and thinking about the symbolism that goes into those, you know, those traditions, into those ceremonies, and what they actually really mean.
But is it possible that maybe you don't know what it really means? Maybe he's not giving away his daughter. Maybe he's giving away the protection. Hey, I protect this woman. This is me protecting my daughter. And
What's the
now I allow you to protect her.
what's the difference?
The difference is, as a father, you cannot protect her forever, but you can find someone that will.
I mean, I don't know a lot about the Bible, but isn't there some stuff in there that talks about, like, you know, ownership of women, you know, during the you know, the marriage ceremony, like she becomes your property.
Yeah, but that doesn't, I mean, that's not
She
something
becomes the
that you,
property of a man.
well, I've never read the Bible in the true, in Hebrew or in Greek. And I think translation means interpretation. And I think when you're translating text from like 1,000 years ago, things get lost in translation.
I
Different
agree.
words have different meanings. So I don't know about that. But
Well, George,
you can ascribe whatever meaning you want to it. Go ahead.
I agree. And but these ceremonies are in direct correlation with the translation or the direct meaning. But it's one of the two. So what does it matter?
It matters immensely.
It doesn't matter
Immensely,
if
yes.
people believe that this is what the Bible is saying. So they're out there acting upon it. Then what does it matter? This is what they believe. And so if what I'm saying is if the Bible is saying that men have ownership over women after marriage, then what does it matter if that's a direct translation from Hebrew into whatever language that is practicing, you know, this part of the Bible? What does that matter? Because they believe it to be true, and so they're doing it, which makes it even worse.
Is your argument that, like, so I guess I get kind of confused maybe. Is your argument that weddings, a man walking his daughter down the aisle is demeaning? Is that the argument?
Yeah, I mean, the argument is that the symbolism of a man walking his daughter down the aisle is the meaning to women. That's my argument. And whether
Yeah, but
they're
why
doing
we have
because
to establish why he's I think that we're getting caught up in, like, we don't agree on why he's walking his daughter down the aisle. Let's try to
he's
figure that out.
okay, then in order to figure that out, then you have to look back in history and figure out where and understand where the practice started, right? Which I think I made a pretty clear argument about where the practice started and how it started. Not necessarily where, but how.
I think you've made a good argument on why you think it's demeaning. But
And I think I made a good argument as to why I think it's the meaning, and
yeah,
and
I'll go
and
with
the
that.
fact that this act is rooted in tradition, right? Which goes back thousands of years, and the origins of these things, of this act, didn't really benefit women at all.
I don't know if I could agree with that. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I think that on a whole, you could definitely, and I think you argued it well. I think you could definitely make the argument that a man giving away a woman as a piece of property is demeaning. My argument is that when a father walks, when I, as a father, walk my daughter down the aisle, I'm not giving away a piece of property. I am walking with my daughter one last time in a symbolic gesture that I will no longer be the most important man in her life. And you could say that I'm giving her away, or you could say that a piece of me is leaving. But I think that there's something incredibly beautiful and sacrificing and symbolizing the idea of like, and very fucking painful. Look, I'm no longer the most important man in her life.
So, George, you can't sacrifice what isn't yours.
Well, I think that you can
Which shows
look at
only
your child as a piece of you. And I think that you can let go a piece of you. And that's sacrifice, man.
I get it. And that may be your interpretation of the modern ceremony of marriage,
Yes.
in which I would challenge that and say, then why is the groom's mother walking him down the aisle in the same, tradition that you just described as a man walking the bride down the aisle?
Because a mother doesn't stand for a son the same way a father stands for a daughter. The father-daughter relationship is vastly different than the mother-son relationship.
Is it?
Absolutely.
See, you're making my argument.
Okay. How so?
Okay. No, I mean, it's just like I said, man, it's not a ceremony that's rooted in equality at all.
Why? Because the relationships are different?
No, because the ceremonial meaning of them is different.
Well, we have to move back because there is no equality. Men and women are different. Relationships are different. And to base something on equality, I think is naive. Right? We're not equal. We'll never be equal. Men and women will never,
No,
ever be equal.
I mean, according to you, we can make it what we want, right? And we can define our own logic.
I think that you can live in a world that you imagine the best possible life for yourself.
Okay. And a world in which men transfer ownership of women from one man to another.
If that's the world, you live in that world. That's your idea of what marriage is. That's
I don't.
your idea of what giving a daughter away is. Not mine.
Well, no, that is the symbolic meaning of what giving a daughter away is.
That's your interpretation of it.
No.
It's not my interpretation. You don't need to say my interpretation of it.
Crack open a history book, George.
I do. I crack them open all the time.
Okay, well, then I'm surprised to hear you make this argument, because that's exactly what the traditional sense of marriage was.
According to, well, I think that when we like we were talking about trying to interpret different cultures, right? The idea of property maybe means something different to you today than it did to somebody 400 years ago in Israel. Is that possible?
It's possible, but then
It's not likely.
It's possible.
It's likely. It's more than likely.
Okay.
The definition of property and the definition of family meant something radically different 100 years ago than it does today. And for us to try to put our values on somebody 100 years ago is silly.
Well, you're the guy who would argue the rights of rituals, right?
I don't know that I would argue the rights of rituals. What does that mean? What does
Well,
the rights of rituals mean?
well,
And how would I argue it?
like you made an argument a couple months ago,
Okay.
supporting rituals, and that we've moved away from rituals, and that it's the rituals that that help define and shape the societies that we live in.
I think rituals are important. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So how can you be for rituals and then, because shit, man, like if you're for rituals, then you should at least understand what the ritual of marriage is.
As should you, my friend. You're
No,
ascribing your meaning to other people's rituals. You're
no,
ascribing your interpretation of other people's rituals and trying to tell them to me.
I'm not interpreting anything. Interpreting
You
anything.
are. You
No,
are.
I'm not, George.
So this is so you know for a fact that these women were property, the exact way you think property is. If I went back 100 years ago and said, this is
You
Paula
read the
Powell's definition
Bible?
of property. No, not really.
Well, the Bible talks about that, and this is where.
Again, we've already talked about the interpretations of the Bible.
But so it
Like,
doesn't
right,
matter,
it
right?
does matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Interpretation is everything.
No,
Interpretation is everything
no, not in this sense, George.
in
Because
every sense.
no, because here's what I'm saying: is it
Okay.
doesn't matter if the Bible is poorly interpreted. What matters is that people believe that interpretation and act upon it. That's what matters.
Someone acting on a poorly interpreted text is not them acting on the meaning of the text. That's them
I'm not.
acting on someone's interpretation of it. There's a difference, right? If the book says love your neighbor, but I say, hey, this what it really says, you should punch your neighbor in the face, and then you go punch your neighbor in the face, you're not getting the meaning of the text. So
Right.
poorly interpreted text is a huge problem. And I'm saying that I'm saying that the majority of people have never read the text in Hebrew or in Greek or whatever. And I think that the meanings have changed. Like, just look at the way words change today. Like,
But that doesn't
so many,
matter.
it does matter.
I get in a literal sense to you, it matters. But it's not. What are you going to do, George? You're going to walk into the Vatican and tell the Pope, hey, man, listen, you guys interpreted this whole thing wrong. And so therefore, you got to cut out all of these things that you guys have been practicing for thousands of years. What I'm saying is that the interpretation doesn't matter. What matters is that people understand it to be a certain way, and then they act upon that. That's what matters. Of course.
But what are you basing that on? Like, the only thing you're basing on is you're saying this is what it is, George. You're telling me, George, a man is giving away a woman, and that's property, and that's how it is, and everybody believes that. That's not true.
It may not be true today, but there was a period in time when that was true, George, and that's where these things are rooted in.
What period of time was that? When was that true?
I would say this is true all up until the 20th century.
And are you basing that on the hundreds of accounts of people that you've known, or like, what are you basing this truism on?
Okay, I'm basing it on history that I've read.
Okay, the Bible.
No, other history.
Okay, which one?
Shit, which one? I don't have to think this for a minute. No, but it's there.
I think there's probably plenty of accounts of people saying that and doing that, but I'm just challenging. Like, it's one thing to read something like that, but I am challenging the idea of a man walking his daughter down, and the idea may come across as this is my property. Maybe, and maybe that's the truth. But might the truth also be like I'm transferring protection from this person? Might the truth be something more than just a reduction to property? Like, I think it's pretty reductive just to see a person like that. And I think humans are humans. And I think that a father cares about his daughter, whether it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. I don't think we've changed that much as humans. And I don't. So it's difficult for me to to
So just
to
because
see
you
that.
this property doesn't mean you can't care for it. Is that what you're saying? Like,
I'm
like,
saying that
like
there's a
you
difference between property and people.
look, both things can be true. You can
Yes.
use something as being property, and you can care for it and love it. Both things can be true.
So you're saying we're both right.
No, I'm saying I'm right, you're wrong, and um, and that's I mean that's what marriage was. Of course, it's evolved. So if you're looking at marriage today, it's hard to believe that marriage was once this, transfer of property and that there was ownership, right? And that a man, had domain over a woman, right? It's hard to believe, like looking around today. Well, it's actually not that hard to believe, but in many instances, it could be really hard to believe that that's exactly what's happening, right? Like, oh, really? Like I never saw it that way, but the clues are there, George, right? In
No,
the
I don't think
ceremony
so.
itself, the clues are there.
Mm-mm.
You
I
know,
I
like
no,
like
I
in
don't
your
think so.
argument that because there's a different dynamic between a mother and a son doesn't mean that the same act of giving away should not occur.
Well, you'd have to
But
go
it does.
back to the I mean, there could be I don't know enough about the actual ritual of marriage to thoroughly understand everything there. But I could see if you like you've made a very some passionate arguments. I don't agree with them, but I think they're passionate. And because you've made those arguments, I can thoroughly understand why you don't like that. And I could fully understand your point of why you think it's demeaning. I can get it 100% now.
But
I
what? But none of those things, George, like I tried to explain to you, are the reasons why I'm not married.
it might be a little bit of the reason why you're not married. I mean, you argued pretty passionately about the demeaning of women in marriage. So that might have something to do with it.
I don't believe in marriage.
Do you think that the demeaning of women may have something to do with it though?
I don't. You know what? No, because I've never believed in marriage before I even thought about the symbolism in it.
Mm. You've never believed in it?
No, I've never pictured myself as being someone who was going to be married. I never, I thought it was, I don't know, even at a young age, I kind of thought it was, like gimmicky.
What if you wanted to steel man it? Could you tell me like some awesome things about marriage?
If what?
What if you wanted to steel man the argument? Like, try to think about it from like a good perspective. Like, try to imagine like,
It's a great
try to.
party.
It's a great party, right?
Great party. Yeah. You
Get
want to have?
have a bachelor's party. Did you go to Mike Nicholson's bachelor party?
No, I didn't go to Mike Nicholson's wedding.
Have you gone to any bachelor parties?
I went to one bachelor party. Yeah.
Did you go to any cool weddings where like it was a party that you were happy to be at?
No, I can't say that I have.
Has your wife ever gone to any like bridesmaids parties or gone to any weddings that she liked?
Um, well, I think she was in Mike and Jen's wedding.
Mm. So if you've never been to a wedding or been part of it, is it fair to say that you've never really experienced a wedding?
I've been to like a couple weddings, like a couple.
A couple?
Yeah.
And you didn't when you were there, did you not like
I
them?
when my mom and my stepdad got married.
Oh, right.
That's like the first wedding I remember going to.
I don't think I went to any of my parents' that sounds kind of odd. Like I don't know. Was that an odd feeling being there?
Yeah. Like it was like the last place I wanted to be.
Yeah, dude, that's the last place I would want to be. It's a weird feeling to have a step parent. You know, it's a weird thing, especially when you're like a teenager and you're like, this person's not my dad, or this person's not my mom, but yet you're put in this position where you're supposed to treat them like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I don't think that's true for everybody. I think I think there are, I think there are plenty of really good relationships between children and step parents.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're not good relationships. I'm just saying it's awkward for the kid. I don't think that there's any relationships where it's not awkward for the kid.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
What do you
What about
mean?
what about
No,
what about
definitely.
what about kids who have been with their step parents since the time they were infants and have no recollection of their biological parent that is, never been in their life?
You're right. I should refine what I said. I should make it more like anybody who is maybe there's an age where it's prime awkwardness.
Yeah, I think that's probably the better way to put it.
Yeah.
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 There's definitely there's like a point when when you're like, really conscious of like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, if you're real little, like you don't even really know. And same thing if you're too old. Like if you're in your 20s, you're like, I don't give a fuck. Go ahead. Your
Well,
40s.
what I was saying was like, it's like there are instances where, this person has been a step parent since the child was an infant, and maybe
Mhm.
they didn't get married until the child was in his or her teens, or you know what I mean.
Right. That's a good
And
point.
so it's not so awkward, right? Because these are just the people that have been in their lives. It'd be similar to like me and my wife getting married right now, and my kids going, "Whoa, really?"
No, because that wouldn't be a step parent. Like that's the person they've known forever. Like if
Well, yeah, in the step parent scenario that I laid out too, that's been the parent, right?
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I was just saying like for people like that are teenagers or like somewhere
Yeah,
between like 9 and 14 or maybe 7. I don't know what the bottom age would be. Maybe even 4 or 5.
yeah,
Because
but then I think it goes away after like 18, 19, 20, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, mom or dad gets remarried and and has grown kids, and they don't really fucking care. You know what I'm saying? It's not so awkward.
yeah, yeah, it it definitely loosens its grip on you, but I like the step parent doesn't really care about you as much as the other parent does. And it just begs the question like the one person has to get like when I think about like my mom needed to have some security. She wanted to have a relationship and she wanted a better life for her kids. So she got remarried because she had a better chance of living the life she wanted to married than she did single. And so, it's an interesting mindset to put yourself in someone that gets divorced with kids. And then what do you do from there? Okay, well, I still want to be married or I still want to have this kind of relationship. It makes me, I don't know, it makes me sympathetic to people that get divorced, regardless of why they get divorced. Like it's a very difficult position to be in.
It is, and then if there's children involved, then you're putting everybody in a difficult position.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the problem. And then, you know, um, so often like parents get remarried to people who don't value their children
Yeah.
in the same way, in the way that they should be valued. And then, and those step, parents, their families don't value those kids.
Yeah.
And, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So there's, So when these unions are made, when there's, you know, kids involved and there's step parents involved, you know, it's up to the biological parent to make
Yeah.
sure, you know, that, hey, you know, like it's going to be difficult. And this is what people should think about before getting divorced, right? It
Yes.
could be difficult for me to find a life partner moving forward that's going to value my kids in the way that they deserve to be valued. And if I never find that person, and I'm putting my kids first, right? And I never find that person, then wow, it's a freaking bright freaking light over my house.
Better check it out.
And if, you know, and if I never find that person, then, you know, there's a good chance that I live my life single, right?
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I
And
don't
so,
think.
you know, I think you have to take all that stuff into account.
Yeah. I don't. Man.
You know, I mean, it's for the good of the kids.
Yeah.
But too often, right? We know that too often that doesn't happen, right? Parents go out there, they're not putting their kids first. They meet somebody who's, you know, not so good to their kids, and they, you know, and to some degree they accept it.
Yeah. I wonder how much is that like it seems a big part of it is that a necessity. You know, they're willing.
Yeah, it could be, you know. Look, I mean, it's these things like put people in difficult situations, right?
Yeah.
Divorce and and you know, some people are faced with like survival choices,
Yep.
you know, after divorce. And you know, I mean, I understand that most people, you know, people are trying to do what they think is right, and they make sacrifices. And sometimes those sacrifices, although you may think they're small, you know, have real life consequences for the people involved moving forward, especially when it comes to children. And you know, it's you know, it's a sad thing, and you know, there's really no way around it. Like it's a reality of divorce. Like everybody gets injured.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a horrible thing. But Paula Powell, we did about 4 hours, my friend. I
Holy
think
shit.
I know, right? That you've done about 8 hours of podcasting today. Maybe
Maybe, huh?
yeah. Well, I don't know how you and Ben went for hours, man. You guys had a
Yeah.
couple hour podcast.
Yeah, we did.
This one's coming up on 4 hours right now, so I think I love it, brother. This is a great conversation, man. I really appreciate it. And we'll meet up tomorrow for the roundtable, buddy.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
All right, brother. We'll send my love to the family. Always a pleasure. We got Kevin to join us today for a little bit. Be one for the books.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, thanks for having me, George.
The pleasure's all mine, brother. I feel like I've got out what I needed to get out, and I had a great conversation. And we had some people join us. Raquel, thank you very much for joining the chat and answering and asking some questions. We're happy you're here. To everybody else who was able to join in and ask some questions, we're usually here on Saturday nights, open lines. So come and check us out. That's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. Aloha.
Aloha.